Leping positioned the knife on the stone and asked them to listen carefully to the sound of the forging. Thus began the meticulous process of polishing and sharpening, repeatedly passing the blade over the stone he had brought with him. Each stroke produced a sharp and clean sound, a metallic echo that resonated in the air. With each precise movement, a faint glow emerged between the two objects, as if the energy of the steel had come to life. After a period of uninterrupted work, the hero stopped and calmly announced that he had finished. Heimenderger, his gaze fixed on the scene, called his son to witness the forging. However, Brian squinted and shook his head, saying he couldn't see because the glow was too intense. The Dwarf King watched intently, feeling a shiver run down his spine. In his nearly 700 years of forging experience, he had never witnessed anything like this. Before his eyes, a god descended and seemed to enter the knife that Leping had just created, as if the essence of that powerful being had been trapped in the blade. Alpha, perplexed by what he had just witnessed, urged his superior, Wang Kai, to take a closer look. He added that it was exactly as he had described. At that moment, a disturbing thought crossed his mind. The weapon forged by the hero had the power to attract gods from different worlds and allow a part of their consciousness to inhabit it. After that astonishing revelation, Leping walked toward Heimenderger with firm steps, holding the knife with both hands. His voice, serene yet determined, broke the silence. He asked the Great Lord if he could help analyze his work. The king, still with a slight tremor in his hands after witnessing the hero's miraculous forging, nodded slowly. With a deep sigh, he agreed to examine the knife. Taking it and using the evaluation ability, he magnified the image 10,000 times. He reflected that, even at maximum magnification, the edge remained perfectly smooth. He wondered how that could be possible, and even considered that his glasses might be broken. However, he decided not to dwell on it. What really mattered to him now was identifying whether the knife had any special effects. It was then that he noticed the terrifying special effect of the table knife, forged by Leping's hands, instant death. Seeing this information, Heimenderger was startled. A chill ran down his spine as he cried out in fear, questioning what was happening. How could a simple table knife have such a devastating special effect? He thought that this could no longer be classified as an S-class weapon, not even as a super S-class. No, this was something far beyond that. What lay before his eyes was a divine artifact, a true and pure divine artifact. After analyzing the situation, he turned around with a look of disbelief on his face. At that moment, an idea took hold of his mind. The key to achieving such an effect must lie in the sharpening stone used in the forging. With that certainty in mind, he asked for permission to examine it up close. He slowly approached the stone and, observing it closely, assumed it must be a material more advanced than celestial ore. However, when he touched it, the stone shattered into pieces. Heimenderger froze in shock, his mind unable to process what had just happened. Could it really have been just an ordinary sharpening stone? The great man fell to his knees, feeling his understanding of the world shaken. A deep sense of helplessness overcame him, and unable to resist, he began to cry. Leping, a little concerned by his reaction, approached and asked what was wrong. Heimenderger, his voice trembling, responded with two questions. The first, how did he manage to forge something like that? And the second, could he share his forging method? Upon hearing that, Leping sighed and simply asked the Dwarf King not to joke with him. At the same time, he thought that Heimenderger was being ironic. After all, the Dwarf King had described his knife as something like that, as if it were just any ordinary object. He couldn't help but feel insecure. His forging was entirely ordinary, and in his mind, it could never compare to that of the dwarves. That's why he answered sincerely. He said that, in reality, he had never thought too much about forging. And if he had to say anything about his own work, it would be that his understanding of the subject was quite basic. Moreover, he also reflected that the Dwarf King was probably just being polite because Elizabeth was present, although in his opinion, his reaction was a bit too exaggerated. Finally, Leping simply said that when forging, the only thing he did was use his heart. That left Heimenderger confused, but he quickly said that now he understood, looking at Leping as if he were the god of forging. The queen let out a soft laugh and commented that it was better to teach someone how to fish than to simply give them a fish, pointing out that Leping had used a simple principle to reveal the essence of the power of rules. After that, in another place, a train awaited them. Heimenderger informed everyone that the train would transport the ore directly to the kingdom of Aristotle, and that the Demon Queen would take on the role of transport officer. Thanks to this, they would have permission to enter the capital without any issues. Then, he added that the train journey would take approximately 2 days, and, with some curiosity, asked the hero why he and his group didn't simply teleport. Lepping calmly replied that time was not an issue, but rather, the most important thing was for the kingdom of Aristotle to feel his goodwill. Gigi, with a thoughtful expression, wondered aloud if that goodwill would be well received. He couldn't help but think that if the kingdom of Aristotle rejected them, they might have to force their way in. Elizabeth, on the other hand, had a completely different concern and asked what they would have for dinner that night, considering the journey would take 2 days. Before anyone could answer, Brian intervened with a serious warning. He explained that bandits had recently appeared along the route and that several cargo trains had been raided, so he urged the hero and the queen to be careful. However, both completely ignored him, something he himself noticed with a hint of resignation. Nevertheless, Lepping responded to Elizabeth with a smile, saying that he had brought ingredients and only needed her to say what she wanted to eat, as he would prepare it. The queen, without much thought, stated that whatever he made would be enough and that she wouldn't complain. At that moment, Heimenderger changed the subject and asked the hero if the precious object he had forged was truly a gift for the Dwarf Kingdom. Lepping, without giving it much importance, replied that there was no need for such formality and simply asked them to take it. The Dwarf King, deeply moved, sincerely thanks him and declares that, thanks to that blade, dwarven forging will reach a new level. Immediately afterward, he kneels and asks his son to do the same. Without hesitation, the young man obeys, and both express their gratitude to Lepping, assuring him that, for their dwarven kingdom, he will forever be recognized as a god of forging. Lepping, feeling a bit embarrassed by the exaggerated display of respect, quickly asks them to stand up and tells them they don't need to do that. Suddenly, a voice interrupts them. Someone calls out to both of them, warning that the train is about to depart. It's Alpha, who is already aboard the locomotive. Elizabeth, wasting no more time, says it's best to leave now, as the sooner they complete their mission, the faster they can return home. After that, Lepping bids farewell to part of his group, who are now saying goodbye to the hero, who was about to depart. The queen gracefully spreads her wings and begins to ascend into the air, holding Lepping with her as she rises firmly. Both land gently on the train transporting minerals to the kingdom of Aristotle. The closeness between them is undeniable, and now, more than ever, it is evident that their relationship has changed. They are no longer just allies or battle companions. They have crossed the line into something more. Elizabeth gazes at Lepping with curiosity and asks what he is thinking at that very moment. At the same time, her own thoughts intertwine with the idea that once he makes the final correction according to his judgment, they will be able to leave conflicts behind, return to peace, and finally enjoy their world together without worries. The hero moves a little closer, his gaze reflecting determination, and in a serious tone, he expresses that there is something he truly wants to know. Intrigued by his words, the queen tilts her head, a spark of curiosity in her eyes, and asks what it is that he wishes to learn. Then he positions himself. The explosive bullets were heading directly toward the train, but before they could cause any damage to the locomotive, they were sliced in half with astonishing speed. The one responsible for this act was none other than Alpha. As his intervention was revealed, he reflected on the legendary golden sword, the noble sacred blade, the divine weapon capable of deciding the course of a battle. For a brief moment, he felt that the sensation that once characterized him had returned, even if only a little. He believed that outside his home, there were no monsters like the ones he usually faced, and concluded that he was someone beneath only 3 people, but above more than 10,000. For that reason, he now prepared to enjoy crushing the weak, and thus rid himself of all this accumulated frustration. Meanwhile, one of the pirates questioned the boy's identity, intrigued by his strength. Another, noticing the situation, warned that this group of bounty hunters was not simple at all. With some unease, he asked their leader what they should do next. The leader, realizing they were cornered, ordered the execution of strategy number 2. However, countless questions accumulated in his mind. Was that boy a weapon spirit? Wasn't the rainbow mineral from the Dwarf Kingdom supposed to be depleted? But above all, how was it possible that Aristotle had developed a weapon of that level? The priority was to stop him. At that moment, the pirates moved, surrounding Alpha with calculated movements as if seeking an opportunity to attack. Amid this maneuver, they began to release a gas from their vehicles. Alpha, observing the scene, frowned and wondered what that substance was, questioning whether it was smoke. Immediately, they realized that something was wrong as the smoke began to solidify. It was then revealed that what they had used was a solidification aerosol. That foam quickly hardened in the place where Alpha stood, trapping him for a moment before he fell heavily to the ground. One of the pirates, with a satisfied smile, commented that the job was done and praised the boss's invention, laughing with a certain admiration. Lipping, visibly worried, questioned whether something like that should even be possible and desperately shouted Alpha's name. However, the queen, with a serene expression, asked him not to worry, assuring him that everything was under control. She added in a confident tone that although he usually acted impulsively, he should not forget that Alpha was not only strong but also a sacred sword, capable of handling the situation without difficulty. The hero confirmed her words. If she said so, it was because she knew he could face it without trouble. It was at that moment that Elizabeth, with a firm gaze, asked Lepping to leave everything in Alpha's hands. Then, changing the subject, she reminded him of what he wanted to say before they were interrupted. Lepping hesitated for a moment, but finally responded that he preferred to wait, as he wanted to do it on a special date. Their anniversary, which would be in a month. The queen, clearly annoyed, clicked her tongue and expressed her frustration just as Alpha emerged from the solidified foam. With a powerful leap, he soared into the sky, higher than ever. The leader of the pirates, noticing what had happened, immediately ordered everyone to open fire. But before they could fire, Alpha, in a flash of light, unsheathed his blade and in a single motion cut through the enemy ships in his sword form. Within seconds, he returned to his human form and, with a defiant look, firmly declared that it was already too late. Assuming a new stance, he raised his gaze and sentenced that now they would see who had dared to scorn him. The leader of the pirates, with a tense expression, watched the scene and murmured uneasily that Alpha's demonic level was not low. Wasting no more time, he quickly reached for a machine gun and attached it to his false arm, beginning to charge the weapon's energy with a malicious smile. Then, without hesitation, he attacked his opponent and fired at the same time, claiming that, in the face of science, demonic levels were not everything. However, Alpha, with his exceptional ability, begins to cut the bullets with speed and precision. While doing so, he mentions that if Leaping had not ordered them to be kept alive, all of this would have ended much faster. But at that moment, he notices something strange. He was not actually cutting the bullets. All those that his arm deflected remained stuck to him, adhered as if they were part of his structure. Soon he realizes that more and more bullets are sticking to him, beginning to completely wrap around him. The situation worsens when, refusing to accept what is happening, he tries to get rid of them but discovers that they are even absorbing his magical power. It is then that he lifts his gaze and sees the pirate leader jumping toward him. In the air, he proclaims that in this world, all matter exists within a relationship of generation and restriction. He explains that as long as the essence of things is understood and the rules are correctly applied, even the weakest can defeat the strongest. He further adds that, in the end, the spirit of a weapon is nothing more than an intelligent metal body with a limited amount of magical power and higher quality materials. Then, he details that the alloy bullets he crafted with magic storage ore and magnetic ore were specifically designed to counter existences like him. After his words, the pirate leader prepares his fist and launches a devastating steam punch. The impact is brutal. After the attack, he observes his own hand in surprise and comments that his opponent is truly resilient. Immediately, he wonders why, on this particular day, such a powerful helper has been invited. Despite intercepting the wagons for 2 consecutive months without receiving any reaction during all that time, now the situation has changed drastically. He confesses to himself that this does not make sense. His mind fills with doubts, questioning what is really happening in the royal castle. What are those ministers plotting this time? He begins to suspect that his own intelligence might be insufficient to fully understand the situation, but even so, as long as they manage to disrupt the resource route, they will be able to stop them. He watches the wagon moving away while changing his arm and activating a new form. He decides to use 100% power in his pneumatic fist cannon. Confident in his strength, he launches his fist as if it were a cannonball. However, something unexpected happens. When he looks at his arm, he realizes that it has been completely destroyed. His expression darkens. He questions whether this was spatial magic. At that moment, Elizabeth bursts onto the scene and demands that he stop. With a firm tone, she warns him that now he will have to reveal what his true relationship with the Dark Guild is. The queen begins to use her power, making the pirate leader's body contort until it breaks. Lepping, upon seeing this, mentions that they have yet to resolve their internal issues, while thinking about how she had said she wouldn't eliminate anyone. Upon hearing him, the queen questions him and accuses him of having already figured it out. It is revealed that the pirate leader was essentially just armor, and inside it was a girl. She is extracted through a barrier as the armor explodes. The girl begins to demand to be let out, cursing the one who imprisoned her. She also adds that they are lackeys of the royal city and swears that even if she loses her life, she will never forgive them. She is Peseus, leader of the Flying Fish Bandits, a genius inventor, and a fugitive princess of the kingdom. Leping, upon seeing her, wonders how that girl was able to use a humanoid armor. However, the queen instructs him to begin the next phase of the interrogation. The hero reflects on how that armor was built and then states that he clearly has many questions for her. The minions witnessing the scene begin shouting for their boss to be freed. They even declare that if they must give their lives to rescue her, they will. They start offering their lives in exchange for their boss, until the thinnest one declares himself the captain of the squad and asks to be heard, claiming he has a plan. But before he can explain it, they are electrocuted, causing everyone to faint. The one responsible for this is Wankai, who immediately activates a mechanical arm to reach something inside a hole. More precisely, it was Alpha, who was completely covered in metallic spheres. Wankai immediately takes out a demagnetizing rod and begins to pass it over Alpha, removing the metallic spheres and freeing him. Then, he tells Alpha that he has very little combat experience and advises him to take it easy since he still has a long way to go. However, the young man was unconscious, and to make matters worse, his headphones had broken. Immediately, a message appears informing that a vulnerability has been detected, initiating a link and restarting the system. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Aristotle, something major was happening, as lightning was striking from there. But not only that, the robots were also revealed to have been destroyed by that attack, showing that the culprit was the floating television of the Dark Guild. That small being asks if the Emperor accepts joining their guild, but he refuses to submit, making it clear that the situation is not so simple. The man who appears to be the Emperor responds that he wants to clarify something, stating that what the Dark Guild did was an offering to the kingdom of Aristotle, and that the mere fact that he accepted to study it is already an honor. He also adds that he is interested in its electric magic body, and asks why he is not allowed to research it as well. Then, he strikes the ground with his staff and activates an ability. This command releases the metal sentinels, robots ready to capture the television, or rather, to destroy it. But before they can fire their cannons, the television uses electricity at high speed, piercing through all the robots. One by one, they explode, and the television asks if he used high-resistance material, revealing that it is useless since, against absolute voltage, everything remains a conductor. It questions whether he dares to challenge the Dark Guild with such a weak ability, stating that, in the end, he does not know how to measure his own strength. But then, part of a robot begins to reassemble, and the television asks if he is going to use the same trick again, assuring that no matter how many times he tries, the result will be the same: his complete defeat. However, upon turning around, the television sees that he is using a giant robot. The man inside that armor, revealed to be the kingdom's minister, explains that he has always researched the use of electric energy magic to replace steam energy magic in machine propulsion. However, the conversion rate is too low, and that he, an entity capable of releasing electric energy magic infinitely, could help solve that problem. The television responds that it does not understand what nonsense he is talking about and gives him one last chance, asking if he wants to die or submit to the Dark Guild. In response, the robot uses the steam fist. However, before hitting the television, the small being manages to ascend and evade the attack. It thinks that the kingdom of Aristotle is not that strong and wonders why its master has not yet taken over that place. But immediately, it confirms that it does not matter, that today, as number 24, it will conquer that place to offer it to its master and make him reborn. At that moment, the giant robot activates something in its fingers, and the television, seeing this, asks if that will be his response, as he is trying to eliminate it. The minister activates the finger missiles. However, the television dodges every attack and questions whether he still does not understand, revealing that there is a power gap between them. But the minister remains unfazed and says that now he is serious. Before he can act, the television uses Great Thunder, a massive attack that strikes the robot, electrocuting the minister inside. For a moment, both remain motionless for a few seconds until the television declares that from now on, the kingdom of Aristotle is officially under the Dark Guild's domain. At the same time, it reflects that its master will be pleased when he learns of its victory. But then, the minister comments that the outcome is exactly what he had foreseen. He activates his robot and launches an attack. He positions himself beside the television and thanks it for the energy, delivering a precise blow that sends it crashing into the ground with great force. The small being gets up and wonders why, reflecting that it used its maximum energy output and should have been reduced to ashes. Additionally, it confesses that it saw the attack, but that its body seemed to react with a slight delay. Then, It notices that the finger missiles were just a distraction, and questions whether his true goal was to place something to disperse its energy. At that moment, the minister positions himself behind the television again, and, while preparing an attack, states that lightning magic should not have such an output power. He admits that he is genuinely curious about its true nature. He activates the attack and sends the small being crashing into the hard ground once again. The blow is so strong that it destroys the television. The minister says that he does not believe only the Dark Guild can operate in the shadows. In the end, it is still uncertain who will devour whom. But then, from the ground where the television's remains lay, electricity begins to emanate, releasing a great electrical power. Upon seeing it, the minister wonders if he really destroyed it, and how its power is increasing even more. From that crater, an electric being emerges, declaring that the minister dared to destroy the limiter its master gave it, beginning to scream in rage. As it releases its electrical energy, it starts to take on a more human form. It is revealed that its true form is that of a woman, who declares that she has changed her mind. She no longer wants them to submit to the Dark Guild. Now she desires the complete destruction of the kingdom of Aristotle. She is one of the 6 demonic pillars, test subject number 24, the Thunder Fairy. The minister, upon seeing her, responds that this is interesting and challenges her to continue with that thought, or at least try. He reflects that she is the legendary Thunder Fairy, and questions whether fairies had not disappeared centuries ago. Finally, he assumes that the Dark Guild has been secretly collecting these beings. The Emperor of the Kingdom yells at the fairy that his ambitions are no lesser than those of her Dark Guild, and that he is ready to capture her. But the magical being makes only a simple move, invoking the immortal lightning. A lightning bolt then strikes the robot where the ruler of the kingdom was. She, still in the air, comments that even if one has great ambitions, they must be backed by power. She adds that any obstacle to her master will be completely eliminated by her, number 24. It is then that small legs emerge from the Emperor's head, forming a kind of centipede that launches itself at number 24. As it wraps around her, he says that the lightning will not fade as long as she remains alive. He calls it irrational magic, and notes that he has not yet used the power of the Dark Gear, as he has ascended to the level of a demon king. Something he expected, since she is a lightning spirit. However, he is not a living being like the ones they know, and hasn't been for a long time. Number 24, seeing him still alive, says he is an annoying being and asks if he plans to keep fighting even knowing her magical level. The dark monster replies that he already knew. But in the kingdom of Aristotle, there is a saying, before science, magical level isn't everything. But then, she responds that she'll teach him another saying, before absolute power, magical level is everything. The dark being, upon hearing that, laughs and says it's nonsense, as he has connected his body to the earth, and unless she can electrify the entire heroic land, she will not escape. Then she announces that she's going to unleash her power, which frightens the monster wrapped around her, noticing that her magical energy continues to increase. But before she can release her power, the dark being approaches and whispers in her ear, asking, "Who do you think I look like?" She is dragged into an illusion where she finds herself in the arms of her master. What she didn't know, however, is that 400 years ago, someone was repairing a certain robot. The hero comments that there was a short circuit there, and that the Demon Queen shows no mercy. That tiny electric spark that came from Wonkai escaped the house at full speed, traveling so far that it ended up landing in the demonic land. Thus, it is revealed that number 24 is nothing more than the result of a short circuit that occurred while the hero was repairing Wonkai. She, unconscious, is left at the mercy of any attack, and that's about to happen, as the mountain's demonic boar stands before her. That monstrous creature prepares to devour her, but as it does, it receives a brutal electric shock, falling lifeless, with the electric woman emerging from the monster's mouth. It's then that she opens her eyes and sees Wisp Malfoy. He gently takes her in his arms, but soon realizes he's being electrocuted, so he activates corpse liberation, increasing his body size and becoming immune to electricity. Or at least making the damage lesser, as he declares that no matter how hard it is, he won't give up. The electric woman, upon hearing that, asks if he means he won't give up on her, and before fainting, thanks him for it. Thus, Wisp Malfoy takes her with him. Upon arriving at his laboratory, he places her in a capsule. At that moment, he looks at her and says that she will now be the 24th trial. He presses a button, initiating the experiment. He begins extracting electricity from the dark beings he had trapped, in order to transfer that energy to the electric woman. Malfoy, upon seeing her, can only say one thing, that no matter the cost, he will bring her back to life. The electric fairy wonders why he is so determined about this, why the bond is so strong. And she concludes that she can't give up either. And so, one day, an electric explosion shakes the demonic territory. She, number 24, declares that she has finally done it. After surpassing the threshold that limited her, she can now generate electricity on her own, without relying on any external source. She thanks Malfoy, as she feels it was he who saved her. But her electric power is so intense that it begins bouncing all over the laboratory, until it reaches Wisp Malfoy, electrocuting him. She, seeing what she's done, reduces her magical power and approaches him. She asks if he's all right. Malfoy replies with another question, asking what she thinks. Just by getting close to him, she electrocuted him to the point of leaving him immobile. At the same time, he thinks that the magical level of that lightning spirit is, at minimum, that of a demon emperor, and senses it is still rising quickly. She apologizes for what happened and says she will leave immediately, but he replies no, that he needs her, and embraces her. As the electricity flows through him, he declares that if he can't even overcome this challenge, then he will never be worthy. She, worried, asks what he's talking about when he mentions being worthy. She begs him to let go, saying she can't control the electricity in her body, and that if this continues, she will end up eliminating him. She asks what is so special about her that justifies him taking such a risk. She silently questions whether he truly needs her that much. The man asks if she believes in love at first sight. After saying that, he activates his powers and launches corpse tentacles to fetch some tools. Then he pulls them toward them and begins wrapping himself in a capsule made of corpses, which he starts shaping precisely. Finally, the capsule opens, and from it emerges Whis Malfoy with a small object in his hands. He says that although this will limit his powers, at least it will keep number 24 stable and by his side. After that day, the experiment begins. Number 24 embeds herself in the base and starts discharging electricity, but the hair contained within the capsule is cut. Malfoy notices it immediately and yells at her to stop. The small object is left confused, while Malfoy complains that it's not working, and just when he had found a source of unlimited magical power. Subject 24 apologizes to her master and asks if she did something wrong. He replies with a question. Why was Her Majesty's hair damaged? That goes against the laws of magic. But then he realizes something. He reflects that even the hair of his queen, which is immune to magic, has been damaged. That can only mean one thing. He starts smiling and wonders if, by mastering that power, he could even invade his queen's body. He laughs and confirms that without a doubt, there is another way to bring her back. Upon hearing him, the small television questions him. He hugs her and replies yes, that he is determined and that he wants to be with her forever. To which number 24 responds that she wants the same. But obviously, Whis Malfoy was referring to his beloved Majesty Elizabeth. The dark centipede rested on the electric fairy's shoulder, its many legs clinging with unsettling precision to her delicate skin. Beside her floated the talking head of the ancient emperor of that realm, wearing a crooked, mocking smile. With a sardonic tone, he remarked that such an outcome was to be expected from the chaotic power of the Dark Sea. He added, with a touch of macabre admiration, that even spirits were susceptible to that kind of mental invasion. The dark being, uninterested in the chatter, ordered him to stop talking and focus on capturing her once and for all. The head, showing no concern, replied sarcastically that there was no need to rush and that he would keep his promise when the time came. However, the dark being remained skeptical. He reminded him that he hadn't even been able to capture that girl when he had the chance, and asked a doubt-filled question. If he would really be able to forge 10,000 dark gears in just 1 month. With a triumphant air, the head assured him that with the energy obtained from the electric spirit, the problem was completely solved. They no longer needed the girl's blueprints. Everything was underway. Without another word, he jumped down to the ground. His voice grew somber as he stated that those who had left would never return, and those who had scattered would not come back either. It was the final confirmation that the descent into that world was closer than ever. The dark being reflected in silence. Since Elizabeth had broken her seal, he had begun betting on those three. However, he had never imagined that the one who would end up truly helping him would be the least expected. It was then that the talking head, with strange agility, drew a magic circle on the ground. Upon completing it, a metallurgical device emerged from the depths. Without wasting time, he opened the artifact and asked that she be allowed to enter. Meanwhile, the dark being summoned his power of mental invasion, effortlessly penetrating the mind of the electric fairy. With a cold voice, he asked if she was willing to give everything up for him. She, with a resigned sadness, answered yes. Then, without changing her expression, the fairy began to levitate slowly into the device. She entered it without resistance, becoming trapped in its structure, as if she had always been destined for that fate. Elsewhere, on the train where the hero's group was, everyone came to a consensus: to free the mysterious girl they had previously captured. Once free, she looked at them with distrust and asked if they were bounty hunters sent by the kingdom to capture her. The hero, with a calm yet sincere tone, explained that just like her, his group had also thought she was part of the Dark Guild. He admitted that it had all been a misunderstanding, a confusion fueled by the circumstances. He added that if everyone took the time to sit and talk calmly, they could probably resolve everything without further conflict. With evident curiosity, the hero reflected to himself, wanting to know what was really going on. Why was the princess of the kingdom of Aristotle attacking the mining wagon of her own kingdom? The situation was incomprehensible to him. At the same time, elsewhere on the train, the queen was also wondering the same. What did all of it mean? The answer did not take long to arrive. The princess, with determination in her eyes, declared that her intention was clear. She wanted to completely cut off the supply of resources from that region, thus causing the total collapse of the kingdom of Aristotle. Only then, she said, could she free everyone from oppression. However, before continuing, she turned to the heroes group and asked them directly, who were they really, and what purpose had brought them to that place? The hero replied firmly that he had no intention of hiding anything. He revealed that his name was Yahello, and that he was the legendary hero. He also pointed out that the woman beside him was none other than Elizabeth, the legendary demon queen. He explained that his purpose was none other than to convince the kingdom of Aristotle to collaborate and join the alliance of heroes in order to face together the growing threat of the Dark Guild. However, deep inside, Leaping couldn't stop wondering why the princess wanted to destroy her own kingdom. He suspected they might be being dragged into an internal power struggle. One of the pirates, upon hearing that revelation, commented with astonishment that everything sounded impressive and wondered if they really were who they claimed to be. For her part, the princess replied that she had no knowledge whatsoever of the heroes' alliance he had mentioned. Still, she clarified that compared to the Dark Guild, the chaos from the Dark Sea now posed an even greater threat. The hero then looked at Elizabeth and asked if the Dark Sea wasn't the same entity that had once been inside Miss Gigi. Elizabeth replied that she didn't remember. Nonetheless, slightly annoyed, she thought Lepping was an idiot and wondered what he would say to her in a month. That was when the hero asked Miss Unpithius to tell in as much detail as possible what had truly happened. She began to recount that everything had started when she was still a child, and that back then, although the kingdom of Aristotle had already been closed off from the outside world, it remained a prosperous place. However, the queen quickly interrupted the conversation, asking for a pause. Hearing the sudden request, the young woman asked with concern what was happening. That was when Lepping, watching her seriously, questioned whether she intended to resort to that again. At his words, the queen began to activate her power, firmly confirming that she would. At that rate, Lepping thought, they would end up talking until the end of time. Right after saying this, the queen cast her memory connection spell. The magic passed through the heads of everyone present, linking them, while the queen declared that from now on, they would see the memories together. At the same time, she thought that this way she would connect with her memories and uncover the secrets Lepping was truly hiding. That was when the princess's memories began to be seen by everyone. The man, seeing what the girl is doing, urgently shouts for her not to erase it, as it represents the fruit of a lifetime of research. But then she stops. Something catches her attention. Surprised, he wonders if it's really possible to convert energy that way. It is then revealed that the girl isn't destroying anything, but has improved her master's research. She explains that if they use that device to split and charge the mentioned magical energy, they can reduce the overload threshold when each unit operates independently. The next day, the princess brings some tools to the lab, but upon entering, she encounters a horrifying scene. Her master has people imprisoned. Upon seeing her, he apologizes. He says he could no longer wait and decided to run the test. He presses a button and asks her to watch closely. He explains that the gas being released is the chaotic force he had spoken so much about, a substance from the Dark Sea. He clarifies that it's not ordinary magic, but a fundamental power capable of completely reshaping the essence of life. The only flaw is that it requires vital desire as a catalyst to briefly manifest in this world. That's why he wondered how to stabilize the chaotic force to make it usable. And that was precisely the goal of his 60 years of research. The machine begins to operate, and dark gears emerge from it. The man grabs one with his hands, impressed, and says that the princess's invention is incredible. He declares that she has solved a crucial problem. Even though it's just a prototype, he says his master can clearly feel the power it holds. Then it's revealed that the master was inside his body. Inside him, the dark being analyzes the gear and concludes that its purity reaches 60%. At the same time, the man hosting it begins to scream in pain. His face distorts, transforming under the energy's effect. Finally, he asks the princess if she can see the results of her invention. He adds that if they continue working together and generating the chaotic force, humanity can break the limits of life and evolve into a superior form. He also states that the kingdom of Aristotle will become the most powerful existence, capable of unifying the entire continent of heroes. The princess, upon hearing him, responds that she understands and will continue the research. Some time passes. The man reminds her that 2 weeks have gone by and asks if she still hasn't adjusted the machine. She admits that reaching 80% purification is difficult, but believes it's possible. She then presses the button, and more dark gears are generated, this time accompanied by electricity. As soon as the dark being grabs one to test it, he feels immense power. But something changes. Suddenly, he asks how she managed to invert the direction of the chaotic force. The inversion begins to electrocute the main body until it explodes. The princess, seeing the result, explains that while he was away, she altered the system so that living beings would reaffirm their own desires, thus helping her destroy him completely. After that, she heads to the palace. She opens the door and enters the Thunder Hall. She walks up to her parents and takes their hands. But something troubles her. Then, a figure begins to emerge behind the thunder. A voice is heard saying that she used poison against poison, and that makes her a genius unseen in centuries. Her master's head appears, laughing. He states that what humanity fears most is to be born, grow old, get sick, and die. Finally, it's revealed that the king and queen are no exception, and the voice questions whether the princess truly believes they knew nothing. Back in the present, Leping comments that, after all, the princess formed a band of bandits together with the soldiers she rescued, with the purpose of opposing the kingdom of Aristotle. He says that's impressive, though he can't help but ask why she didn't seek help from the Dwarf Kingdom or the Swordsman's Guild. At the same time, the queen was observing the situation with disgust. She frowned, frustrated to realize that, in the end, she wasn't able to fully invade the filthy Leping's memory. The princess, for her part, replies that she has no contact at all with the outside world. Moreover, the Minister of Science has placed a bounty on her head, so she no longer knows whom to trust outside the castle. One of the pirates speaks up, saying that it was the princess who saved and modified them, allowing them to keep living as humans. Another adds that she gave them a second life, and if she asked them to die for her, they would have no complaints. The princess clarifies that she's not doing it for herself. If they let the Minister of Science continue with his plans, everyone in the castle will end up as sacrifices to the Dark Sea. She also reveals that the minister still doesn't possess her blueprints, and for now, can't create a complete conversion device. But it's only a matter of time. Therefore, under the current conditions, the only thing they can do is cut off the kingdom's access to resources and force it to come out. On the train, everyone fell silent. Alpha, curious, asked why everyone had gone quiet. Then the queen asked Leping what he was thinking about. The hero replied that even if he knew everything, it wasn't possible. It simply couldn't be done, as it was a matter of principles. He imagined that without magical power, it was impossible to manufacture anything, and consequently, it couldn't be controlled either. However, thanks to Miss Pisius's memories, he fully understood the fundamental principles of combining magic and technology. He reflected that first, the magical power is injected into the amplifier, then vaporized at high temperature, and the magical liquid is sent to a closed reactor, where it is vaporized at over 350 degrees. That causes a magical collision and the release of energy. Then, he thought that the peak of his technological career was probably limited to domestic robots like Wang Kai. He would likely remain stuck with conventional family machines. He believes he will never be able to master those magnificent magical machines from the kingdom of Aristotle. He thinks of his little dog and concludes that all of this is very disappointing. Upon hearing this, the queen says that since he thinks that way, she has no choice but to act. Then she begins to activate her power to expel the dark gears from the princess's pirates. The princess, startled, gets up and asks what she is going to do. She adds that even if those gears aren't exactly good, without them, her companions wouldn't be able to stay alive. The hero looks at the queen and says that they are good people. Elizabeth, holding the gear in the air, explains that's why she initially believed they were part of the Dark Guild, since within them lies the chaos of the Dark Sea. Once implanted in the body, it corrodes the host's soul. However, regardless of how it is produced, even if it grants more life force or temporarily increases magical power, in the end, everything will be reclaimed by the Dark Sea. She explains that first the soul adheres, then comes the increase in magic or bodily mutation. In many cases, this can lead to the Demon King rank and even allow control over the dead. She thinks the Dark Guild produces this through corpse cultivation, whereas in the kingdom of Aristotle, they are created through technology. But regardless, the members of the Dark Sea are in this world for a reason. She believes it may be the descent of a god. Moreover, she supposes that when the number is sufficient, all lives revived with the Dark Gear will become nutrients, and the main body of the chaos will be able to descend upon the continent of heroes. At the same time, the invaded souls will also immediately become its nourishment. Faced with this, the queen affirms that he is right and that indeed it's a matter of principles. Then she crushes the gear. The princess, upon seeing this, denies what the queen has done. She screams and jumps on the queen, accusing her of having killed her companions. But the queen uses a small part of her power, surprising the princess, who becomes paralyzed. The queen had used the Abyssal Gift, a slight expansion of her power over that area. The princess remains motionless for a few seconds until one of her companions gets up, asking what happened. Another says he feels something different and wonders if his body is made of flesh again. The princess, shocked, falls in front of them, asking how it's possible. How could they have regained their flesh bodies? She starts checking and with tears in her eyes confirms that Yes, now it's flesh. She looks at the queen and says it was they who just a moment ago used magic to help everyone regain their human form. She apologizes and pleads for forgiveness for her earlier ignorance. The hero comments that when Elizabeth acts, healing is immediate. She, for her part, replies that it was nothing, just a minor matter. Lepping stands up and, walking toward them, asks if after regaining their human bodies they feel any discomfort. He states that he brought medicine in his backpack. One of them replies that he doesn't feel bad, just like he had slept for a long time and is a bit tired. The queen observes the situation and sees the hero speaking with Pysius, assuring her that everything is fine. Then he asks her to tell them how they can thwart the conspiracy of the kingdom of Aristotle's Minister of Technology, and assures her they can count on his help without fail. The queen reflects on how Lepping always manages to integrate into the world of these simple mortals. Since she ruled the world, she had grown used to looking down on everyone. The power difference was so vast that it was inconceivable for a superior being to be friends with an ant. All that was left to her was loneliness. That's why she longed for a challenge with someone truly powerful. But now that she has reached the level of sanctity, even reviving lives is easy. The power gap has widened even more. In her eyes, these mortals look like tiny, wandering particles. She wonders if all of this makes any sense, and concludes it probably doesn't. She imagines Lepping as a god descending, drawing her attention with his absolute power. An aura of equality emanates from Lepping, which makes her wonder if he truly intends to treat all living beings equally. It seems absolutely absurd to her. But noticing that he is surrounded by ordinary people, she reflects again. Someone of his level should have surpassed this kind of closeness to compassion. Moreover, those beings can't even comprehend the magnitude of his existence. And yet he leans in to hear their problems, even answering their childish questions patiently. What is he really seeking? However, she denies that this is the charity of the strong to the weak. Seeing his eyes, it's as if through them he glimpses a world even she hasn't managed to reach. Her power had always expanded outward, devouring, conquering, overwhelming, and crushing everything with her infinite magic. But she had never considered the possibility of shrinking. Besides ascending to the top to see it all, there is also the possibility of diving into the essence of all things to understand them. She concludes that these lives are made of tiny particles, but wonders. Inside those particles, is there a quantum world she has never explored? And she recognizes that Lepping has already transcended the chains of power. Only now has she truly seen that path. All that reflection causes Elizabeth to advance in her magical level, reaching the second level of the sacred state. After that, she thinks that he hid his creator power just to be able to have a relationship with her. She believes that bending all the truth of the universe into a bouquet, just to place it in her hands, is his way of expressing romance. After that, Elizabeth asks if there's anything she can help them with as she stands up. Lepping questions whether she's willing to act on her own, to which the queen responds that of course she is, since she has much to learn from him. She thinks he's probably upset because she decided to help Miss Pixius on her own, and she notices he looks a bit surprised. The girl in question thanks them both and reflects that she can't understand what they're thinking. She confesses to herself that she had never heard of the hero and the demon queen, so she isn't sure how powerful they really are. It's then that Lepping asks what the plan is to destroy the Minister of Technology's conspiracy, and if she has any good ideas, as they're willing to help her in any way they can. At the same time, he thinks they must find a way to make up for the situation, because if he ruins Elizabeth's mood, no one will come out unscathed. The princess explains that the original plan was to cut off the kingdom's resources to force them out, but now that she has more allies, she believes this time they will strike first. She then begins detailing her strategy. First, they will enter the kingdom disguised as escorts for a shipment of minerals. Since they all now have a human appearance, they will be able to evade the mechanical inspection at the border. Once inside the kingdom, they will remain hidden in the residence until nightfall, then proceed with the infiltration. Along the way, they must avoid the steam soldiers, since the target is located in the sewer beneath Central Street 3. They enter silently until they reach the stairs and descend them. She adds that she has studied the kingdom's canal system design, which is connected to the interior of the royal city. She remembers every detail with perfect clarity, so there's no reason to worry about getting lost. Then, they'll have to travel 5 kilometers through that path to find an abandoned and sealed entrance. Once there, if they manage to force it open, they'll gain access to the heart of the kingdom, the Aristotle's magic steam room. She clarifies that this device was invented by her ancestor Aristotle and is still operational, supplying basic energy to the entire kingdom. For that reason, she considers it unfortunate to have to destroy it to cut off the Minister of Technology's energy supply. However, once someone enters the system's core, the defense mechanisms will be immediately triggered. All passages will be sealed, and a large number of steam soldiers will arrive within 10 minutes. That means they'll only have that brief window to act. They'll need at least 4 people to stay behind and place the special explosives she herself developed. Therefore, those who take part in this phase must be ready to give their lives. The explosives must be ignited from a minimum distance, which will inevitably result in the death of whoever does it. At that precise moment, the destruction of the magic steam engine will create massive chaos and distract the Minister of Technology. That will be when she has the device ready to invade the castle's brain. The entire royal city is a complex machine powered by magic steam. If the rebel conversion device is inserted into the castle's operating system, it will alter the flow of the magic steam, causing a repulsion reaction among several mechanical parts. This will trigger a domino effect that will collapse the entire massive structure. This is because without the magic steam engine, the Minister of Technology will no longer be able to create the castle giants. And without them, the minister's plan to conquer the world will also completely fail. She adds that for the revolution, they do not fear death, but begs them to, if possible, bring her companions back to life and save her father and mother. She knows that both science and magic obey the law of equivalent exchange, and that's why she's willing to give her whole life in return for what she's asking. But her pirate companions immediately object. They ask what she's saying and remind her that, more than anyone, she must live, because the kingdom needs her leadership. They also state that they will sacrifice themselves willingly for her. They ask her not to underestimate them and remind her that she was the one who saved their lives, so her sacrifice would not be fair. However, the princess demands silence. She explains that since all this began because of her, it must also end by her hand. Elizabeth, hearing her, smiles and confesses she has no problem sharing her life with the others. She then asks Lepping what he thinks about it. The hero is left speechless, but the princess interrupts him and asks whether he has doubts, and if a single life like hers is not enough. To that, Lepping firmly replies no. He also asks her to discard that absurd idea once and for all. The princess calmly nods, saying she understands. But then, the hero says that there is a better solution to all of this. Surprised, she asks what it is. Lepping explains that at first he thought the same as her, that just as it all started with him, it should also end with him. That's why he embarked on the so-called hero's adventure. He had made a promise to Elizabeth. This time, he would unite everyone to maintain peace in the world. However, he now realizes that it only delayed their plan and caused unnecessary sacrifices. He reflects that the pirates have already given their lives for peace, and it's time to put an end to that absurd agreement. He then looks at his queen and asks her to act, to solve the problem of the kingdom of Aristotle, because they can't keep waiting. Upon hearing him, Elizabeth also reflects on those words, "Can't keep waiting." And she responds with determination that she will do so immediately. She confesses to herself that she too can't wait any longer and declares that she'll go right now to fix the problem at its root. She thinks that once everything is over, it'll be a world just for her and Lepping, and the sooner it happens, the better. Meanwhile, in the laboratory of the kingdom of Aristotle, the technicians and automatons begin producing multiple dark gears. The Minister of Technology watches enthusiastically and states that progress is even better than expected. In just one day, the machine has produced a mountain of gears. He also reports they've generated nearly 5,000 dark gears, and that the energy conversion rate of the lightning fairy far exceeds that of conventional magic. He admits he'd love to have more time to study the lightning fairy. However, it will no longer be necessary to wait a month, as tomorrow they will be able to activate and mobilize the royal war giant to lay waste to the hero's continent. He reveals that the fairy is using an infinite discharge, providing unlimited energy. The dark being beside him reflects in awe. He didn't expect the leader of the Dark Guild to have such a useful woman at his side. He thinks that, with her, in just one more day, they'll be able to open the portal to the Dark Sea in this world, and thus unleash chaos. He longs for that moment with impatience, certain that it will make both the hero and the Demon Queen pay a high price for their arrogance toward his lord, Azathoth. But then, the small dark being is suddenly transported elsewhere, and right in front of him stands the Demon Queen. The being from the Dark Sea wonders mentally if she is there. The minister, noticing his condition, questions if something has happened. In response, the small being reflects that she is ruining his plans again. Moreover, he knows that it is still not the time to declare war against her. Thus, he replies that it is nothing, and adds that he will first return the gears to the Dark Sea. His companion, intrigued, asks why he is in such a hurry, reminding him that tomorrow everyone will be ready. The small being responds, trying to reassure him, by assuring that he will return tomorrow and starts absorbing all the gears. He also adds, with a hint of mockery, that he will come back, assuming his companion is still there. This leaves the man somewhat confused, wondering what he meant by that, and after the small being disappears, he remarks that he finds him very strange. At that moment, the alarm starts sounding, warning that something is approaching. Upon noticing it, the man asks if they are invaders. Immediately, he deploys his steam soldiers throughout the city, while people wonder what is happening and why so many soldiers are being deployed. Additionally, they notice that all the Steel Guardians are heading toward the royal castle. Just then, in the sky, the queen's group and her guests appear. They, for their part, are surprised to realize they have returned to the kingdom, landing right in the center where the Minister of Science has deployed his most powerful forces. This prompts the princess to ask if being there is not the same as falling into a trap. However, the hero tells her not to worry, since they now have Elizabeth, which leads Alpha to comment that this is an exaggeration. Before they can continue talking, the metal soldiers fire upon them. However, the attack proves useless, as the queen, with a simple gesture, turns the soldiers into coins. The Minister of Science, observing everything, wonders what is happening and why all his steel guardians lost connection at once. He suspects that Princess Pisceus secretly infiltrated and modified his magic key. Meanwhile, the citizens wonder how the steel guardians turned into manhole covers. Some, even more confused, believe it might be an emergency drill but discard that idea since no alert was issued by the royal castle. This leads them to question whether perhaps the Minister of Science, who recently announced a great upcoming celebration, is conducting a general rehearsal. However, something unexpected happens. From the mouth of each citizen, a dark gear begins to emerge. A large number of gears accumulate in the sky while the hosts faint due to the removal of the implanted dark devices. Once they have all gathered in front of the queen, she makes all the gears disappear with a slight movement of her hand. The minister, witnessing the scene, wonders how the princess managed to extract all the dark components implanted in the citizens and destroy them. He reflects on what powerful invention she must have created this time. Without wasting time, he connects cables from his own fingers to the screen in front of him, using his controlled connection. He states that this time he will not be as lenient as before, and to eliminate this threat from the root, he will activate his most powerful weapon, even if it means destroying half of the kingdom of Aristotle. He begins to use even more energy from the electric fairy, granting him enough power to start moving the castle. An imposing figure starts to rise. The princess, upon seeing it, questions how he managed to activate it without completing the energy conversion device and wonders if he somehow solved the secret equation. Thus, it is revealed that the great warrior of the royal castle has been activated. Meanwhile, the fairy emits electricity, and the minister uses his staff to locate the intruders. He eventually observes that the princess has gained help and suspects they belong to the Swordmasters Guild. He also reflects on how they managed to eliminate all the dark mechanisms in a single strike and begins to believe that Gigi is involved with them. Elsewhere within the group, Lepping is amazed and exclaims that he is finally seeing a supreme weapon combining magic and technology into a super robot. The queen comments that she knew he wanted to see something like this, so she ordered it to be brought out especially for him. She then asks if he has observed it completely, because now it is about to act. But before proceeding, Alpha announces that this time he doesn't need help, and asks to be left to handle the situation alone. He reflects that now he can recover all the honor he previously lost. He transforms into his combat form and flies straight toward the imposing robot. The robot, for its part, attacks without hesitation, and Alpha fearlessly charges straight into battle. Unfortunately, the robot's armor proves too resilient. The impact crushes the blade of his sword and brutally slams him into the ground with such force that he reverts to his human form. The queen, watching the scene, senses something more. She feels a strange premonition, as if the enemy before them were somehow related to her family. Meanwhile, the hero once again worries about Alpha. However, there is no time to dwell on it, as the minister reveals that, with the power of the Thunder Fairy providing infinite energy to the great warrior of the royal castle, it will reach at least the level of a 4-star Demon King. And that will be enough to devastate the entire continent of the heroes. Even if the Swordmaster himself were to come, he would barely be able to scratch it, he says, starting to laugh maniacally. After that, the minister yells that now everyone will die by his hands, launching an attack. The blow is deflected by the Magazord, but before the attack reaches the queen's group, the pirates and the princess already thought it would be their end. Elizabeth, with a simple hand movement, makes the arm heading toward them explode into dust, just like the rest of the mechanical arm and the entire Magazord. The minister is left confused, and the lightning fairy remains suspended in the air. Right after, the queen grabs the man with her energy hand and starts to crush his head until she finally rips it off, separating it from the rest of the body. She brings the head to the others, and Elizabeth asks if that is the Minister of Technology who brought calamity to the kingdom of Aristotle. The princess of that kingdom confirms it, and the minister confesses that she had the courage to find a very powerful helper. The pirates behind them ask if he's finally been captured, and they comment that it's impressive. The queen asks the princess if she has any more questions. If not, everything will end there. Sios replies that he has nothing more to say and asks to be eliminated immediately. The hand starts to crush the minister's head, but before that, he laughs and questions if they really think they can defeat him by killing him. He warns them that the power behind him will arrive soon. Those are his last words before being crushed. Meanwhile, the lightning fairy was falling until she wakes up. The group doesn't notice, and the hero says everything went as expected, since if she intervenes, no problem will arise. However, Elizabeth replies that the Supreme doesn't need to prove his supremacy, and that so-called problems are simply answers not yet found in the correct dimension. Just then, the fairy sees them and asks if, by any chance, they are the legendary demon queen and the hero who appeared in her master's memories. The queen, in turn, asks if he understood correctly, and he says yes, although he reflects that he doesn't understand anything she said. Still, if he believes that the demon queen, or rather his girlfriend, must be right. The fairy prepares herself, wondering how it's possible they are there, and if she wasn't just fighting the Minister of Technology of Aristotle a moment ago, she doesn't know what's going on. However, she's glad to have found them, as she plans to eliminate the legendary hero and then capture the demon queen to offer her to her master. She's sure he'll be delighted. Immediately afterward, she moves quickly, positioning herself behind the hero in an attack stance. But the queen senses her and comments that the familiar feeling came from her. At that moment, the fairy shouts that she's going to eliminate him, lowering her electricity-charged hand. However, upon barely touching one of Lepping's hairs, she feels that it represents a great rebellion against order, and hears a voice asking her to return. The fairy disappears. The hero, clearly unaware of what happened, asks what that familiar feeling she mentioned was. The queen replies that it's nothing, but in reality, she mentally wonders how she didn't understand it before. She believes it was all part of Lepping's plan, and if this is his way of showing love, then she can only accept it and feel it deeply. Meanwhile, the princess comments that everything is finally over. She looks toward the kingdom, or at least what's left of it, since much of it has been destroyed, and at the same time, its inhabitants are not in good shape either. It is then that Elizabeth proposes they leave, saying they can leave the rest in their hands. She holds onto the hero's arm affectionately and asks him to praise his queen. He replies that he will and congratulates her for having done everything perfectly. Psius, upon observing them more closely, reflects that a revenge for which they risk their lives is nothing more than dust that vanishes with a few movements. He says that he survived, that he got his revenge, and that he should feel happy, but wonders why he feels so empty inside. He believes that's what happens when a lifelong obsession is fulfilled too easily. It's more suffocating than failure. He remembers what his ancestor Aristotle said, that the ultimate value of life lies in the ability to awaken and think. But he wonders if he ever imagined that, upon awakening, he would discover that the epics written by mortals are not even footnotes in the books of the gods. And he concludes that this is more despairing than death, as he looks at the couple in front of him. The queen, for her part, comments that it's annoying, since when it comes to perfection, she cannot compare to him. At that very moment, the princess gathered her courage, telling herself it was not the time to fall into despair. Despite the challenges ahead, she had to rise, rebuild her nation, and lead it once again down the right path. She knew there was much to be done, but also that she could not give up. But then, without warning, she found herself dressed in royal garments, as if she had already been crowned queen. Around her, her companions also wore elegant outfits, just as confused as she was by what was happening. The confusion deepened when a crowd began chanting her name, enthusiastically hailing her as their new sovereign. The young woman, completely bewildered, couldn't understand what was going on. That was when a voice proclaimed that their little princess had grown up, and that the time had come to hand her the kingdom's legacy. When she turned toward the voice, her eyes filled with disbelief and emotion. Her parents, safe and sound, were standing right in front of her. Unable to hold back, she began to cry and knelt down, deeply moved, while her mother asked why she was crying, reminding her that this was her big day, the day of her coronation. Gently, she assured her that from that moment on, she was officially the queen of the kingdom of Aristotle. With tears streaming down her face, the princess mumbled that it was nothing, that everything had happened so fast she still felt dazed. Questions began to surface in her mind, wondering if everyone had come back to life, and if it was all real or just a dream. It was then that she exclaimed she remembered everything. She looked up to the sky just as the king, concerned about her condition, asked if she was feeling unwell from the stress, offering to call a doctor. But the truth was different. She wasn't looking up because of dizziness or weakness, but because she recognized the silhouettes of those who had helped her get to that moment. Lepping greeted her with a smile and joked that he never expected Elizabeth to be so helpful to others. The queen, upon hearing him, replied that she only did it because he had called her a perfectionist, so she decided to give him a special gift. The hero, reflective, thought that in the queen's hands, the world was merely a toy, and that if she wished it, world peace could be achieved in an instant. This made him question the true meaning of his existence as a legendary hero. Elizabeth, hearing his words, wondered if perhaps she had let herself be carried away by emotion. She feared that if she intervened too much, humanity would stop evolving on its own, and he would lose the pleasure of observing that growth. Even so, the queen sighed and said it didn't matter anymore, that she would destroy everything at once. But he interrupted her, asking her to relax, saying it was time to go home. He added that he had already made a decision. affirming that such worries only existed when she wasn't by his side. Now, he no longer felt the burden of being a hero. He confessed that all he wanted was for the world to reach peace as soon as possible, so they could live peacefully and happily together. The queen, blushing and impressed, wondered if he was perhaps teaching her a great lesson through everything they had experienced. About the hero's responsibility, the meaning of existence, and the value of free will. Unable to hold back her feelings, she ran to embrace him, and together they vanished with a snap of fingers. Pitsis, who witnessed their departure, thought that even if his memory had been altered, he would never forget them. He knew it was the legendary hero and the demon queen who had rewritten the reality of the kingdom of Aristotle with magic. Because of this, he decided to abandon science and devote himself to the study of magic, hoping to reach that level as soon as possible. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky and struck the hero's house, being absorbed by an old lamp. Instantly, the lamp lit up and emitted a signal, announcing that it was summoning the element team to gather. The first to respond were the spirits of fire and water. Then came the knife genie, followed by the earth beaver. Finally, when the electric gauge recovered the last 1% of energy it was missing, something began to materialize in the center of the room. It was the lightning fairy, with a power level comparable to that of a 9-star divine demon. She declared that she had been about to do something crazy, but fortunately managed to hold herself back just in time. Now she had recovered all her energy. She stated that for this first major internal competition, the element team also had to register and participate. The water and fire fairies also appeared, both with 8-star divine demon levels. However, the fire one said she would only participate as an extra and asked to remain where she was. The gold fairy, also with divine level, suggested that if they managed to fuse, they might have a small chance of winning. The lightning fairy nodded, saying that now that her power was fully restored, they could perform the elemental fusion and enter the competition together. Then, the water fairy asked a deep question, whether they, the outsiders, could only show their full power when inhabiting the creations of the creator. The fire fairy complained, annoyed at her teammate, whom she found unbearable. The gold fairy explained that after fusing with the elements, they could generate a temporal space of their own. In that environment, they could unleash their true power. It would be like the culinary creatures created by the creator in the gastronomic world, who were dozens of times stronger within their exclusive domains than in the real world. The lightning fairy added that all of them, the elemental fairies, came there as outsiders, driven by admiration for the creator. And regarding contributions to this house, if they don't take first place, no one else can claim it, since many of the creator's creations grew thanks to the energy they provided. In her opinion, in this competition, the elemental team must win and prove their worth and position through victory. So to achieve that, she knows her power alone is not enough, and they need everyone's cooperation. She asked what they thought, but then she turned to the beaver, pointing out that he was clearly banned from the competition, which made him slightly angry. In reality, it was the earth fairy, whose power surpassed even that of a demon god. At that moment, the little being let out a scream, prompting the lightning fairy to fearfully ask if the creator had returned. Upon hearing that, everyone rushed to hide. Leping, upon entering, calmly announced that they were already back. He settled into the couch and asked Wang Kai to bring 2 cans of soda. The little dog, upon opening the fridge, discovered the lightning fairy, who told him that the element team wished to register for the internal competition. Wang Kai, surprised, asked if she still wanted to compete, considering she had nearly caused a disaster. He wanted to know how she planned to make up for such a mistake. The lightning fairy asks if, in the end, he didn't manage to stop it in time, reminding him who that electric discharge came from. And, if they're going to talk about responsibilities, he is the main culprit for that almost happening. Wang Kai thinks it all happened because his owner scratched the chip too hard, which caused it to tremble. Even so, he doesn't admit his fault and asks if she's threatening him. The fairy replies that she would never dare. She just says that, since everything was resolved without problems, they should leave it in the past. Also, the elemental group has already lost the last 3 editions of the Tournament of the Strongest, so they're begging to be allowed to participate this time. The puppy understands the situation and replies that the tournament will take place when his owner is away, and that day everything will be decided. The fairy thanks him, but also informs that upon recovering the lost electricity, she obtained information about someone named Wes Malfoy. However, before she could give more details, Wang Kai closes the fridge door and rushes to bring the drinks to his master. Upon receiving them, he comments that he finally saw the forging technique of the dwarves and the technology of the kingdom of Aristotle. The queen emphasizes that the most important thing is that they achieved their goal of mutual balance. He thanks her while receiving the drink and adds that he wouldn't call it mutual balance, but he hopes everyone can truly unite and maintain peace. After all, he believes that with his level of power, demanding anything from others would be ridiculous. Elizabeth agrees, since if he still needs to ask for something, then they have no reason to exist. She reflects that it was thanks to a combination of grace and power that her subordinates achieved a true union of hearts, so that this time it may last. She remembers that in the past, as a queen, she only knew how to use fear to force everyone to follow the right path. That's why, during the 500 years of her absence, the outside world fell into chaos. She believes Lepping has given her a new lesson. He, for his part, comments that the Swordmasters Guild, the Elven Tribe, the Church of Annie, the Dwarf Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Aristotle are the stable forces he knows. The only exception is the Demon Kingdom. He knows that now the Dark Guild members from that kingdom have disappeared, but even so, something doesn't seem right to him. Elizabeth asks him not to worry, since she herself went there, checked the entire Demon Kingdom, and found nothing suspicious. Curious, he asks if Amelia has already awakened, as he could ask her about the Dark Guild. However, before continuing his reasoning, something distracts him. He reflects that he's a fool, and wonders what he's thinking. Since his relationship with Elizabeth began, he only has lewd thoughts, especially when they're alone. He knows it's natural, but they're not married yet, and he must stay calm. The Queen, on her side, replies that Amelia is still recovering inside her dimensional space, and when her memory improves, she'll be able to come out. But she notices something strange, and asks him what's wrong, why he suddenly froze completely. Lepping, startled by the question, replies that it's nothing, but Elizabeth knows it's not true since she felt his intentions. She slides toward him and asks if he's hiding something from her, and if he's going to make her wait a month to tell her. She gets even closer and whispers if he doesn't want to take another step with her right now. Just then, Lepping's bird flies away. He quickly gets up and says it's time, moving away from the Queen and saying he'll prepare dinner first. She, with a certain lust in her gaze, comments that there's no rush. Like good wine, the more it ferments, the more intense their love story will be. She licks her lips and wonders how could she not understand his feelings. She'll do whatever he wants, as she's willing to wait a little longer. Then 3 days pass. 10 days. 18 days. Until the scene changes. Uncle Boss is cutting something with his cards. The Swordmaster is also present and comments that his power should not be underestimated, since they're currently facing the Lava Octopus King, a supreme 5-star demon. Luna Sorges from the Swordmasters Guild says she doesn't understand her aunt's mysterious movements, since she sent them to clean a completely desolate place. Another warrior remembers that after returning, her aunt announced she would step down as president and then force them to learn that complicated Tai Chi style. Now she sends them to that remote place just to build hot springs and prepare them for the arrival of someone unknown. That was said by Anna Sorges, also from the guild. Then Ching comments that Miss Gigi said all this is part of that person's plan, and that they should simply follow orders. Luna nods, recalling that her aunt has ascended to the rank of the feared 4-star demon, and that neither heroes nor legendary demons compare to a single finger of hers. Anna, aware of her aunt's power, wonders why someone so strong would obey that person. She believes that even the Dark Guild members disappeared out of fear of her. That's when someone calls them reckless. It's Elif, who warns them to watch their words. If they dare to speak ill of that person again, she won't hesitate to punish them in Miss Gigi's name. Anna mocks the elf's challenge, saying that she barely achieved something and is already arrogant, asking if someone not even recognized by the other forces now thinks she's untouchable. Luna adds that she doesn't know how someone with half-elf blood became the leader of the elves and questions whether Elif can teach them a lesson, doubting that her power is up to it. She ends by saying that person isn't even taken seriously. That enrages Elif, who calls Luna insolent and throws a card at her, but Ching immediately deflects it. The huge octopus watches its opponents, while Anna asks Ching to step aside because she wants to see what Elif is capable of. He replies that he won't. He promised Miss Gigi to protect them, and if something happens to them, it will be his responsibility. That's why he asks the new leader of the Elven clan to take it out on him, not on them. Elif agrees and decides to act as he wishes. However, she warns him that if he manages to defeat her, he must apologize for his words and actions, because by then, it will be too late to realize who he has offended. King confirms he will comply. He confesses that he has wanted to face her again since the last guild competition, when the apostles interrupted and he ended up losing to her. Therefore, he promises to give it his all and asks her not to hold back either. Meanwhile, the octopus only watches the verbal fight, growing angrier by the second due to the lack of action. The monster's patience runs out and it launches an attack. However, both Elif and Ching react instantly. One summons the flying dragon and the other the bluebird. Both fighters pierce through the octopus while their summoners begin to rise into the skies. The battle is swift and fierce. They fight in the air, exchanging powerful blows. Anna comments that girl, Elif, has greatly improved her strength, as she can now fight evenly with Ching, who has reached the 5th level of enlightenment. But Luna senses something more. She states that Qing has not yet used his Tai Chi sword technique and believes that the Elven clan cannot compare to the Sword Saints Guild. During the battle, Elif reflects that this is the most powerful flying dragon she can summon, and that Qing is worthy of being Miss Gigi's direct disciple. For his part, Qing knows his opponent hasn't shown all her cards yet, and he must not lower his guard. In the middle of a charge, Elif asks him to stop testing her and settle this once and for all. King agrees. Then, the elf prepares the skill. Explosion, Scythe of Death. While the swordsman begins to channel the fifth technique. Shake the dust against the wind. But before they can unleash their attacks, a sword cuts through the air and the ground between them. Both lose focus and turn their attention to the one who caused the interruption. It's Uncle Boss, who asks them to stop and calm down. He reminds them that they are there to solve a problem, not to create another. He also tells Elif she's been too impulsive, and that as leader of the Elven clan, she must think of the common good. Qing understands the boss's action, though he wonders how a simple flying card can have so much power. Deep down, he admits it's no surprise that Uncle Boss is recognized as the second strongest, only after Gigi. Elif, for her part, accuses them of speaking disrespectfully about that person. However, she also reflects on her father's actions. She knows that if she loses, the name of the Elven clan will be stained, and if she wins, the Sword Saints Guild will lose prestige. Then something starts to happen. Elif's wounds begin to heal. Annie has arrived too. She comments that in the past, that person defended her and didn't even get angry when publicly offended. According to the saying, he who does not know does not sin, and she believes that person holds no grudge. Elif greets her friend Annie, but then corrects herself, referring to her as the Witch of Paradise. Annie states that Raphael's magic can help calm things down. She also asks everyone to unite to first solve the current problem. Once gathered, Luna asks if anyone can clearly explain what it means to search for a hot spring to welcome a supposed unknown visitor. Uncle Boss replies that he already explained it, but sincerely admits that not even Miss Gigi knows the true purpose behind it. She is merely following that person's instructions. Anna says they are once again talking about that person, and asks if they really can't say more about who it is. Luna also opens up. She hates that feeling where everyone knows the truth except them. King says not to worry. As long as it's an order from Miss Gigi, they will obey. He reminds them that they still have 10 days. However, he reports that they've already scanned the entire volcanic area without finding a drop of water or a trace to build a hot spring. Uncle Boss says that searching for a hot spring is a test imposed by that person, and they knew it wouldn't be easy. He adds that if they succeed, they'll receive that person's blessing, and that's why Miss Gigi sent them. As for who it is, he says they've already met her before, but he can't reveal more. Annie explains there's something odd. Records indicate that this volcanic area in the demon realm had many hot springs. She wonders why they all disappeared. Elif is also puzzled. She admits the tests are never literal, and that maybe the true meaning is something they still don't understand. Suddenly, Annie senses something and warns everyone to be careful. A huge and complex magic is descending from the sky. Uncle Boss wonders if the arrival of evil has come sooner than expected. Everyone begins to feel a heavy pressure in the air. Anna says she can't even breathe due to its weight. Elif's father asks her to organize the explosions, and the girl starts doing so. Right then, Annie warns that they are coming. From the sky, something begins to fall. It hits the ground forcefully, raising a cloud of dust. Uncle Boss asks what that thing is. Anna does too, unable to believe that something like that exists in this world. A huge robotic structure rises before them. The robot is so massive that the group is completely overshadowed. Annie reports that they've been discovered. Immediately, Qing moves and announces that he will attack first. The boss tries to stop him, asking him not to act impulsively, but it's too late. The young man attacks with his new skill. Cross. However, when his blow strikes the structure, he sees something. He wonders if that was a dragon. He reflects that this is the dragon slash technique, and that only those who have slain dragons can use it. Then the robot's door opens and 3 people emerge from inside. The biggest one comments that, after so long without leaving the dwarf kingdom, he's welcomed with an attack from his disciple as soon as he sets foot outside. Another person, surprised, wonders if it's possible to learn magic there. Meanwhile, the last silhouette apologizes for his disciple, admitting he hasn't guided him properly. Asks Qing if he's okay, which the swordsman confirms as he stands up. However, he soon fixes his gaze on the opponent in front of him, and questions whether they really are who they seem. It is then revealed that Heimerdinger had used Lepping's knife to defend himself from the previous attack. Then, he wonders if this is the place where the hero entrusted them with their mission. Gigi, who was with them, confirms it and informs them that, in addition to her disciple, the others were also chosen by the hero. Pythias was also there, fascinated to meet more people. So much so that she greets everyone and asks if someone could teach her magic. Gigi thanks Boss for waiting for her. He replies that it was nothing and welcomes her and the Dwarf King for arriving. With everyone gathered, Pythias explains how, with the help of the hero and the demon queen, she became the new monarch of the kingdom of Aristotle. For his part, Heimerdinger comments that they will also collaborate to resolve the crisis of forging S-level weapons in the dwarf kingdom, as those weapons can now be mass-produced and distributed at any time. Upon hearing them, Anna quietly wonders if they really are the legendary hero and demon queen, and now understands what they meant when they spoke of that person, as it was about that couple. Luna also responds quietly, doubting it's true since she believed they were dead. Then, Pythias mentions that her new model was improved after observing Lepping's mechanical dog. She adds enthusiastically that this is her first time in the outside world and hopes to get along with everyone. Elif notes that it's unusual for someone's identity to be revealed so directly. Meanwhile, Luna reflects for a moment and asks her sister if the name Lepping sounds familiar to her. Uncle Boss tells his daughter that in the past, the Dwarf King used to be a subordinate of the Demon Queen, and that perhaps, having reunited, there's no longer a need to hide his identity. The young elf nods in understanding. Then, the Dwarf King adopts a serious attitude and asks if they still haven't found the hot springs the hero mentioned. He recalls that, according to his memory, 500 years ago, there were many underground springs full of magic in this volcanic region. Boss reports that during those days he was searching throughout the volcanic area, but they didn't find a single drop of water. Elif adds that even her clan's special seeds, capable of detecting underground water 100 meters deep, didn't react at all in that place. Pythias, confused, asks if it's really that difficult to find water in that area. The elf's father, intrigued by her words, asks if she perhaps has a solution, which excites Elif, as she thinks that might be the case. Then Pythias questions whether they know how to use magic and suggests using elemental spells to summon water. Upon hearing her, Luna laughs slightly and comments that she thought Pythias would say something wiser. Anna agrees and adds that the Queen of Aristotle seems funny to her. The young woman, a bit embarrassed, apologizes and asks if she said something inappropriate. Annie explains that if elemental magic hadn't declined, they could use it to solve the water problem. Intrigued, Pythias asks why elemental magic is in decline. The Witch of Paradise informs her that, according to the records, more than 400 years ago, the elemental spirit suddenly disappeared from the hero's continent, and no one knows why. But the young queen still doesn't fully understand and apologizes to those present, as she had never heard of elemental spirits. She reflects that it seems her library's magic books are outdated, and that she still has much to learn. Annie explains that without the blessing of the spirits, elemental magic remains stuck at the intermediate level and can't reach the advanced level. However, thanks to the spirit's disappearance 400 years ago, a magical revolution took place, during which all kinds of new spells began to be developed. She reveals that the most powerful intermediate-level spell of the water element is the water ball technique, but it needs to absorb moisture from the environment, so it's useless in this dry air volcanic region. Pythias understands everything and thanks her for the explanation. She also reflects that it was embarrassing not to know even basic magic, but even so, she won't give up and will strive to catch up with the Demon Queen. Then Heimerdinger suggests an idea. What if they bring the water directly there? He explains that, with Gigi's swordsmanship, they could easily open a channel from a distant lake. The woman replies that she's capable of doing it, but she won't. Anna says she understands her aunt's point and asks if she's refusing so that the three of them do the work. Luna, for her part, informs them that the nearest lake is 10,000 miles away and wonders how they would manage something like that. Finally, Ching says they could give it a try, but Gigi stops them and asks them to reflect for a moment. She explains that altering an entire ecosystem would cause an environmental disaster, affecting many creatures and even wiping out some. She wonders if it's really worth doing just for some hot springs. She also believes that's what the hero really wanted them to understand. At that moment, all the most powerful members of the hero's group realize something. They all come to an undeniable truth. If they focus only on completing the mission for a reward, they will soon forget the hero's original intention and fall into greed, facing severe consequences. Because, on the hero's scale, they are only counterweights. The final decision, whether they receive a reward or face destruction, will depend on the choices they make in that encounter with destiny. Annie affirms that what Gigi says makes a lot of sense. She remembers that when the queen and the hero helped her, they did it because they perceived her heart was pure. But she also recalls that when she competed with Gigi and Mr. Boss, she felt her heart beginning to become corrupted. She believes, luckily, Miss Gigi made her come to her senses in time. Heimerdinger points out that the reasoning is sound and that if they sacrifice lives for power, they will be no different from members of the Dark Guild. Then Pythias has a new idea. Why not bring the water through the underground? She explains that they could dig a channel from the sea 100 meters underground, thus solving the water problem without harming the surface. Luna, upon hearing her, seems to mock her, and laughing a bit tells her she thought she'd say another crazy idea. Then she asks that if it's so easy, why doesn't she do it herself? But to everyone's surprise, Pythias responds that she will do it, and asks them to leave everything in her hands. She points to her gigantic robot and explains that with that new soldier of the kingdom, she'll be able to finish the excavation in 7 days. Uncle Boss adds that with more hands working, anything is possible. He mentions that once they get the water, he and Elif will bring seeds from the elven forest to reforest the surroundings. Heimerdinger also wants to contribute and offers to take care of forging the furniture for the Hot Spring Hotel. He even states that he'll make S-class chairs.
Pythias exclaims that she has some new ideas for the hotel design and the hot springs area. Curious, she asks if they could help her collect some volcanic rocks. Annie replies that there's no problem with that task, as she can use her dolls to transport the materials. Gigi also wants to help and says she can take care of cutting the materials and securing the area along with her guild of master swordsmen. Uncle Boss doesn't want to be left out and exclaims that, regardless of the reason, everyone wants to contribute their strength for a common goal. Elif adds that this atmosphere is truly inspiring. Even Heimerdinger appears cheerful and comments that the last time he saw such unity was 500 years ago, when they shared the vision of the hero and the demon queen. Then everyone joins fists and with a cheer declares that they are now truly united. Meanwhile, 1,000 meters underground, wise Manhwa rested in silence. He wondered why Heimerdinger, Gigi, and Jimji's lineage were gathered there. He mentally questions whether they might have discovered his location, but considers it impossible, as the barrier created with his master's magic cannot be detected. He also reflects on the fact that number 24 has disappeared again, and wonders if he too has betrayed him. He thinks that is insolent of him, especially now that he cannot move because he is absorbing his master's magic. Even so, he declares that once he finishes absorbing it, all of them will be an offering for his lord. Meanwhile, in the hero's courtyard, numerous monsters were gathered. One of them launches a freezing ray, but the giant serpent dodges the attack and responds with a deadly entanglement, immobilizing its attacker. However, flaming attacks begin to fall from the sky, devastating the ground with a spell known as Meteor Flame, caused by another monster, or rather, the immortal Phoenix. When the bird thought it had won, a powerful attack struck it. It was the work of the Lord of the Mammoths. But at that moment, a being begins to perform a jutsu. The Toad Lord launches his tongue, catching the mammoth and slamming it against the ground, shattering the terrain with its fall. As he retracts his tongue, the toad asks him to get up and continue the fight. However, before they can continue, someone cleans their hands and declares that the attacks weren't bad at all. The toad, curious to know who said that, turns and sees Wankai. The little dog comments that it seems the old croaker has followed his idea of being the master of the chickens in the coop quite well. The old toad replies that without the pressure of survival, magical beasts have become lazy, have grown fat, and their flesh is no longer firm. However, since his last report, he ordered them to intensify training to stay in the best shape possible. Then Wankai informs him that the time has come to pay the protection fee once again. The toad chuckles slightly and comments that more than a protection fee, it could be called a sincere offering to the creator. It is then explained that, in the vast meadow of magical beasts, those who are lucky enough to be seen by the creator are called the chosen children. Before the creator, these small beings, by becoming flesh and blood, serve as divine nourishment. But death is not the end. Through decomposition, recomposition, and the exploration of the laws of the universe, evolution represents true eternity. Because when a living being is devoured by the creator and goes through the transformation process, a new being is born from its evolution.
The wise toad informs Wankai that throughout this year, the average magic level of the Prairie of Magical Beasts has risen from the magical spirit level to the magical sovereign level. Then he asks which ingredient the creator will desire this month. He reminds him that each ingredient gives rise to a new being. For example, those with juicy and tender textures generate a magical bird. Those with firm textures create a creature similar to an eel. Delicious but not intense ingredients produce a being resembling a mammoth, while tasty ones without strong flavor result in a creature similar to a lamb. Upon hearing all that, Wankai remembers that his master mentioned he hadn't eaten wok bullfrog in a long time. This leaves the wise toad terrified for his life, fearing that this may be his end. Meanwhile, in the hero's house, something is happening, as the queen is enjoying some pleasant massages. She asks the hero to be gentler, since he is pressing too hard. The hero is carefully massaging her feet. At one point, he suggests leaving it for later, but Elizabeth replies that a bit of pain doesn't intimidate her at all. However, she begins to feel something that makes her whole body tremble. Lepping informs her that he hasn't started yet, but she asks if she can mentally prepare first. Nonetheless, she changes her mind immediately and asks him to talk less and start already. Then the hero explains that in traditional Chinese medicine there is a saying, if it hurts, it doesn't flow. If it flows, it doesn't hurt. He also tells her that the foot massage may hurt at first, but once the energy flows, she will feel relief and comfort. He assures her that he will proceed gradually, from gentle to deep, and asks her not to be afraid. The queen doesn't respond, and Leping says he will begin with scraping the sole of the foot to relax the entire body. As it begins, Elizabeth can only think about the pain, the itching, and the pleasure she feels through those complex stimuli. Her senses are at their most sensitive. Along with the aroma of essential oils, those stimuli guide her toward transcendence. She concludes that she can see through that trick. It is then that Leping announces he will begin officially, starting with the Yongquan point, an acupressure point on the sole of the foot. That simple stimulus causes the queen to be sent to the bamboo realm. There, she reflects that the bamboo nodes are hollow, but grow like arrows. Therefore, when channeling magical power, one must leave 30% of space, or else it will become stagnant from excess. She doesn't remain long in that realm, as the hero applies another stimulus, the Taichung point. That transports her to the lotus realm. Observing her surroundings, she thinks that the lotus is born from the mud, but remains untainted. It bathes in clear waters without becoming vulgar. It is also hollow inside and straight on the outside, without entanglement or branching. Once again, Leping presses another point, the Susanli point, located on the leg. This sends her to the orchid realm. Gazing at the scenery, she reflects that even on a cliff covered by 100 meters of ice, beautiful branches still bloom. They don't compete with other flowers in beauty. They bloom alone, releasing their fragrance in the extreme cold. Seconds later, Leping stimulates the Sanyanjiao point, teleporting the queen to another realm, the lily realm. There she thinks that an orchid in a quiet room emits a charm that moves the heart, and that true power does not always need to intimidate the world. It lies in knowing oneself. Just at that moment, the queen withdraws her foot from Leping's hands. She begins to feel something, and slowly transforms, beginning to assume a new form in the dimension she was in, and that was the sacred mode. However, she soon returns to the real world and falls onto the bed. Seeing that, Leping stands up and suggests she rest for a while he goes to prepare dinner. As he leaves, the queen reflects that this was a transition between realms and wonders, if such a technique really exists. Meanwhile, the egg in which Amelia was contained begins to move, and from within, a leg emerges, breaking through the shell.
Now awake and in the house, Leping expresses his joy upon seeing that Amelia has finally hatched. He also asks her to try his dry bullfrog stew, arguing that, after all, protein is the true essence of nutrition, and urges her not to be shy and eat plenty. The little one doesn't understand exactly what he means by protein. At that moment, the queen asks the dragon what really happened the day she went to eliminate the Dark Guild. She questions whether she, having reached the Demon King level, was defeated. Her mount replies that yes, she was defeated. Then she begins to remember and recount what happened during her encounter with Malfoy, who told her that this way, he could surpass her. Visibly furious, she curses him, commenting that he dared to defile her master. Just then, what appeared to be her master begins to emerge from the capsule and activates her powers. At the same time, the old man denies that this is true, and claims that Amelia is mistaken. The copy of Elizabeth attacks the dragon, but she manages to gain distance. She observes her opponents and admits that indeed, that is her master's magical power. Even so, she asks how it was done, since her true master is still alive. The old man replies that it was very simple. He confesses that it was his love for her that kept him going, even after tens of thousands of failed experiments. He never believed that his master had vanished. He always thought she would return to his side. He says it was that love that kept him strong until now. Upon hearing all that, Amelia calls him a fool and warns him that she will pulverize him until nothing is left. But before she can act, two shadows, Malfoy's servants, jump in to attack her. However, the dragon invokes her dragon legs, striking her enemies by surprise and launching them far away. The floating television is the first to recover. Upon getting up, it senses that Amelia has Demon King level strength and asks its master if it can be released to fight. He replies negatively, adding that the dragon's magical power is crucial to his experiment. She must not be harmed, so they must capture her alive. He orders number 24 to take the others away, and the television nods, obeying the command. Meanwhile, Amelia comments that he is being too arrogant. She asks if he really thinks he can capture her, and warns him not to be overconfident just for using a copy of her master's power. Although silently, she thinks that master is a fake, and that now she is just following her true master's orders. Just then, an energy hand emerges from the ground, completely trapping Amelia, who barely manages to wonder when he summoned those arms. At the same time, she reflects that she can't move, and admits that even the magical techniques are identical. She curses Malfoy again for daring to create a copy of her master. The old man then reveals that her master was created from the original's magical power. He adds that no one else knows that energy like she does, and questions whether she still believes that this master before her is fake. The copy, for her part, activates her powers again and launches an energy arm to subdue Amelia. The dragon, visibly in trouble, tells herself that the situation is critical. Due to the pet contract, her master's power completely suppresses her, and if this continues, she'll be captured. Malfoy asks her to stop resisting and cooperate to avoid further suffering. But then, the dragon begins to materialize her head, revealing that she has summoned part of her body. She declares that, even if she can't attack someone with her master's power, she can destroy this land. With a slight smile, she confesses that she can even annihilate everything. Thus, she begins to activate her world annihilation magic. One of Malfoy's subordinates, seeing the attack, wonders if that is the true power of someone with Demon King level. Malfoy, witnessing it, yells that everyone must flee. At that moment, Amelia launches her attack against the ground where they stood. The explosion completely destroys the place. By then, all the Dark Guild's pillars were already out and somewhat distant. They were astonished by the destructive power, especially the woman from before, who again wonders if that is truly the power of a Demon King. The entire place has been reduced to rubble. Elsewhere, Amelia falls exhausted. She reflects that she was too arrogant and admits she didn't expect Malfoy to use her master's power. Luckily, she managed to use her technique Dragon King's Roar, but upon looking up, she wonders why that land is still there. It is then revealed that the Fake Queen used the skill Forbidden Transcendence. The old man, meanwhile, comments that Lady Amelia's fury is terrifying. Even though they absorbed 99% of her power, her destructive capacity is fearsome. He's glad that the origin of that power comes from her master, otherwise he'd already be ashes. He laughs and asks the dragon if she can use that power once more, because if her master absorbs just a bit more, she'll be complete. But the little one is already exhausted, begins to lose consciousness and apologizes to her master, as she failed her mission this time. As she falls unconscious, the mark she bears begins to shine, activating the ability Dragon's Protection. A protective egg begins to envelop her, prompting Malfoy to wonder if there was still a hidden spell. But then he dismisses it, convinced that he can still extract her magic. Back in the present, Amelia confesses that's what happened, that even though she had reached Demon King level, she ended up completely defeated. She looks at her master and admits that she shouldn't still be alive, that she doesn't deserve to be her mount, and asks her to grant her an end. But Elizabeth is busy eating, and when she looks at her, she asks if she's done talking. Lepping asks his queen what she thinks of the food, and confesses that it's been a long time since he prepared that dish, wanting to know if the flavor seems right. Elizabeth replies that it's fine, although perhaps her taste has shifted towards stronger flavors, as she finds it a bit bland with just white rice. Then the hero asks if she'd like him to prepare fried rice, to which she replies yes, and that she's looking forward to trying it. Amelia watches them expressionless, especially when she hears Lepping comment that lately his queen seems to enjoy spicy food, to which she replies it's because of living with him, and in the end, she adopted that taste. The dragon begins to get upset by their relationship and starts calling her master repeatedly. She, however, silences her by stuffing food in her mouth and tells her that she already heard her and will grant her request. Then, all of a sudden, Amelia is transported to a path made of stars in an empty vastness. She wonders where she is and why her master dragged her into her inner realm. She starts walking and comments to herself that, without a doubt, this is a punishment, a lesson from her master. She believes she'll be trapped forever on this endless path to reflect on her failure before dying, as her defeat stained her queen's reputation. She walks in silence for a long time until she grows tired and collapses. She says she'll never see her master again, that she's no longer worthy to serve her. But still, she can't help but miss her. It's then that a mysterious figure asks if it is really her. The dragon, upon looking up, finds a giant toad falling in front of her, saying that the Lord of Beasts, the Golden Dragon, has finally arrived. The great being confesses that the path to Demon King level is not easy, and that the final obstacle is her. The little dragon, confused, asks who he is, and the toad replies that it's normal she doesn't know him, as when he was a tadpole, she was already the Lady of Magical Beasts. But during the years she was gone, he took her place and led all magical beasts. However, unless he defeats her, he cannot be called the new Lord of Beasts. He confesses he already sensed this day would come. That's why he is fully prepared for this moment. He reveals other beasts behind him. And in the next instant, he jumps to attack the dragon while shouting that if he defeats her, he will complete his final evolution and ascend to Demon King level. Amelia, confused, asks him to wait a moment, but it's already too late. The battle has begun. Elsewhere, Lepping reports that the fried rice is ready. But upon returning to the table, he asks what's going on with Amelia, as she seems to be absent. He wonders if she's not used to eating that. The queen replies that it's not that she's just savoring carefully the protein he prepared.
Lepping approaches the dragoness and tells her he hopes she likes what he prepared, while reflecting on how dragons eat, watching her chew slowly and cautiously. However, she was in a deep, almost dreamlike state, fighting an epic battle within. At a certain moment, the dragoness, in her original form, looks at the Toadmaster, who then comments that it's no coincidence she's known as the Lady of Beasts. Before her stood a mountain of bodies, and Amelia asks her opponent if he will continue to fight. Gravely wounded, he replies that it's unnecessary, accepts his defeat with honesty, and declares himself ready to be devoured, thus becoming nourishment for her evolution. After uttering those words, he collapses. His fall causes all the bodies, including his own, to disappear. Amelia, also wounded, murmurs to herself that if she cannot even overcome a defeat, then she doesn't deserve to serve her mistress. Even if she has failed, she remains the Lady of Beasts. Immediately, her body begins to radiate light, invoking her power and ushering in a new stage of evolution, the Golden Master Dragon. Meanwhile, outside, Amelia screams, prompting Lepping to ask if she wants some water. The queen, upon seeing her, responds that it's not necessary, that the food was enough. She adds that now she needs time to adapt, and if she succeeds, she'll gain great benefits. She reflects that even she, when she had the Demon King level, barely endured the impact of those spicy dumplings. She knows that even with the support of the contract, tasting that culinary blessing is truly challenging for Amelia. Then, the hero accepts Elizabeth's words, assuring that as long as it benefits Amelia, there's no problem. At that moment, the dragoness was undergoing a process of evolution, reaching the Demon King's highest level. Elizabeth, witnessing it, affirms that only then will she earn the right to be her companion, and that if she fails, she must simply rise again. Amelia, with tears in her eyes, deeply thanks her master's dedication. She hugs her and bursts into tears. The queen embraces her tenderly, asking her to calm down, that it's all over now. Lepping, watching them, comments that she now looks much more lively and concludes that protein helps in recovery. However, Amelia looks at him somewhat annoyed and thinks she hates to admit it, but now she understands why her mistress became interested in that man. His power is unfathomable. Moreover, she understands what it means to eat failure, that is, to savor it. Because to reach a new level, one needs a stimulus, or a threat. But this time, she won't be defeated. She will help her mistress defeat that legendary hero. Then she asks for more delicious food, ordering another serving. Lepping is delighted and starts laughing, commenting that it reminds him of the first night Elizabeth appeared. The queen, upon hearing him, denies that ever happened, as she doesn't consider herself a glutton. Outside the house, Alpha returns to her human form, but before more can be known, a new day dawns. A bulge begins to appear under the sheets where the hero and the queen were sleeping. Something starts moving beneath the covers, waking Lepping. Then the dragoness appears, immediately taking human form and announcing that it's her turn now, scaring Lepping, who is pushed out of bed. Additionally, Amelia informs that she'll handle her master's night companionship and reflects that if her mistress hadn't forcibly locked her in the contract space, she wouldn't have left her sleeping in her place. The man, somewhat bewildered, responds that it's fine, that he had to get up anyway, and tells them to keep resting while he prepares breakfast. As he leaves, the queen watches him and then smiles, wondering if he still refuses to take the next step with her, since he always uses the excuse of waiting until the end of the month. Either way, she doesn't believe him, and declares that she'll have him before the month ends. After preparing breakfast, which looks more like lunch, the hero sees them and comments that he was just about to call them, revealing that the queen was on her mount, which leads Lepping to think that Amelia truly is her battle companion. On the other hand, outside the house, Wong Kai comments that everything feels strange, wondering where Alpha is. Meanwhile, the hero washes the dirty dishes, while the queen and the dragoness sit on the sofa. Amelia expresses that now she understands everything and learns how her mistress lived there. Even so, she wonders why she says she keeps getting better. She adds that to her, her mistress is the most powerful being. But Elizabeth replies that there's always a higher mountain. She illustrates it with a mental image of herself climbing a peak, only to discover upon arrival that there are even taller ones. She then says that's how it feels. Amelia questions how there can be a mountain taller than another, reminding her that she masters all existing magic. The queen explains that when one climbs the highest peak, one realizes how small they are. Also, in this world, there are countless things they still don't understand. As an example, she mentions a TV series. She confesses to having watched it dozens of times and having learned a lot, but still not fully understanding it. She reveals that the series is called Journey to the West. Amelia, observing and listening to her mistress, wonders if there's an emptiness within her. She thinks about the characters in that story, the three pure ones, supreme Taoist deities, the great immortal Genuine, the Buddhist symbol of eternity and wisdom, the Jade Emperor, the Tathagata Buddha, and finally, the Bodhisattva Guanyin. She reflects, with some insecurity, that she can't understand all of that, and that if she were in the world of that series, she would be nothing more than food for the so-called golden-winged Great Peng. That amount of data overwhelms her, causing her to faint, which Elizabeth finds understandable and tells her to take her time, that she'll get used to it soon. After cleaning, Lepping asks if Amelia fell asleep again. Then he asks his queen if she wants to go out and get some sun, to which she cheerfully replies, yes. Outside, the hero throws the frisbee for Wang Kai to catch, telling him it's a new model made especially for him. The puppy thinks his master finally thought of him and jumps excitedly to catch it. However, he misses and gets hit on the head. He falls to the ground and activates his defense system, taking a combat stance. He reflects that the frisbee is a masterpiece, and that if he manages to return it, his master will praise him. He starts trying to catch it with all his resources until he gets frustrated and decides to use his black hole attack. But when he fires it, the disc changes position. Wang Kai uses more of his technology, detecting advanced technology and the presence of intelligent life. He notices that the disc is made with his master's advanced polishing technique, and that's why he can't predict its movements. He confesses that this is exciting, that it's been a long time since he found a worthy rival, and that he's about to exceed his emotional code. Then he deploys his weapons and shouts that now they will decide who's the best. He starts destroying everything around him to catch the frisbee. Lepping, seeing him, is surprised and thinks Wang Kai is having a lot of fun. He adds that when Wang Kai returns it, it will be Elizabeth's turn, asking her if she wants to throw it. But the queen refuses, asking if there's nothing he wants to do with her, suggesting something more intense and intimate. The man is surprised by the suggestion, but Elizabeth reaffirms her words, asking if there's a problem with that. She tells him that since he promised a surprise at the end of the month, he's been more distant. She questions if they're not a couple and what they can't do before that date. She states that he's too traditional. Lepping apologizes and confesses that he is indeed traditional. He adds that his original plan was to propose during a trip to the hot springs. Being romantic, he wanted to save that special moment. The queen, impatient, reveals that she can't wait any longer and wants a deep connection with him right now. Lepping, confused, replies that they're outdoors. He thinks that, as a normal man, if she asks if he wants to, the answer is clearly yes, although he never imagined his first time would be so wild. Then, the queen replies that it doesn't matter where, because there's no one else in that place. Hearing her, he says it's not that he can't do it, but asks if she really wants it to be there. He reflects that it doesn't matter, and that for Elizabeth, he must be brave. If he's too traditional, he'll be boring. Then the queen asks him, please, to tell her about his past, just when Lepping was taking off his clothes. They both look at each other, confused, revealing that they had very different intentions. The queen speaks and says she knows it may seem rude, but she really wants to know everything about him. She thinks to herself that spying on the past of someone of high status has always been a taboo. Lepping says she's right, because in a relationship, it's important to truly know each other. He adds that they've lived together for so long and never talked about their pasts. However, he pauses to ask if she really wants to know his story, warning that it's quite boring. He reflects that his previous life isn't worth mentioning, as he was just a regular office worker. But the queen firmly confirms that she does want to hear it. So Lepping begins to tell his story. In his previous world, he was an ordinary person. He grew up with his grandparents in the countryside and did all kinds of farm work. He admits that although it was a hard life, those were his happiest times. Eventually, he grew up and studied. He even attended the South China Agricultural University. Every time he had a break, he would return to the village to help his grandparents. That life continued until he finished university. Then, he moved to the big city for work. Little by little, he stopped visiting the countryside, and eventually, his grandparents passed away, leaving him completely alone. He remembers his routine became monotonous, work and home day after day without rest. Sometimes he thought he was born for that. He didn't like video games or anime. His only pleasure was watching short videos during his commute. But one day, for some unknown reason, he arrived in this world. He was completely shocked by what he saw. He remembers that upon arriving, a system appeared asking him to become the legendary hero, but he had absolutely no interest. The queen asks if he's done. He nods, saying it was a very simple life. Elizabeth reflects that it's not like that at all, that it's actually something pure. She believes the purity with which Lepping lived allowed him to reach a spiritual level many will never achieve. She says that sometimes the simplest path is the most powerful. And after achieving sainthood, she too began to understand that principle. She thinks about that system and wonders why it wanted Lepping to be her enemy. She believes that luckily, he possessed immense purity, and that's why its plan failed, creating their shared destiny. But then she contradicts herself, saying it surely wasn't something she could control. Then, Leping asks her about her past, wanting to know more about her life. The queen asks what exactly he wants to know. He replies, everything, from her childhood to how she became the demon queen who now rules the world. Elizabeth agrees, but warns him that her story is boring and that if he ever wants her to stop, he can interrupt. So she begins to tell her story, which began on the hero's continent, in a time without magic. Long ago, that continent was a peaceful and prosperous world, where all races lived together in harmony. However, with the rise of racial extremists, division started to spread. Conflict became inevitable. Little by little, the races split and fought for resources. Under that twisted ideology, half-bloods, symbols of racial union, were treated as outcasts and expelled, becoming homeless refugees. To survive, they settled in dangerous abandoned lands. Over time, they formed a new group known as the Demons. That forgotten land came to be called the Demonic Land. Though referred to as one group, demons were never truly united. In a place of extreme scarcity, looting, fighting, and crime were daily survival. Elizabeth admits that, for as long as she can remember, the Demonic Land was always like that. A young Elizabeth was in the middle of that chaos. One day, while holding a piece of bread, a larger demon insulted her for getting in his way and snatched the bread from her. She shouted at him not to do that and demanded he return it. The larger demon was about to hit her, but something unexpected happened. Elizabeth awakened her powers and, grabbing the demon's foot tightly, demanded her bread again. Then she explains that thanks to her exceptional genes, she had her first magical awakening at the age of 5. And in that lawless land ruled only by strength, by age 9, she ruled a district, known as Witch Elizabeth. At 13, she personally founded the Kiet Crimson Moon mercenary group, which quickly became feared throughout the demonic land. Her fame grew so much that even rival forces paid them large sums, unaware of her true purpose. Elizabeth recalls that in each mission, she took the opportunity to infiltrate forbidden places and collect ancient magic books. Eventually, after finding the final piece on her 16th birthday, she had a second awakening. One so powerful it shook the entire hero's continent. After that, she conquered the demonic land by force and became the Demon King, launching her conquest plan and declaring war on all forces. Her power was so immense that the elves surrendered, the orcs surrendered, the dwarves surrendered. Finally, she reached the human capital and attacked it directly. During the battle, Elizabeth confronted the human king, accusing him of being a hypocrite who destroyed countless lives just to prolong his own. She told him his time was over. The king laughed, asking if she really would do it. He admitted his arrogance, but said he understood her, as she was the first to reach the supreme demonic rank. He spoke of his corpse magic and his plan to gather all his descendants. But before finishing his sentence, his head exploded, followed by his entire body, all before Elizabeth's eyes. Then, a familiar face approached. He asked if she was Demon Queen Elizabeth. Upon confirmation, he knelt before her, saying his name was Malfoy, and on behalf of the humans, they surrendered. That's how she ruled the world with absolute power, ending racial divisions with a firm hand. She led the hero's continent and restored its glory, promoting equality, harmony, and prosperity. She confesses that even though her ideals were fulfilled, she never felt joy. She believes it's because she became too powerful and lost her connection with others. Or maybe because she no longer had any goals. And a life without purpose is an empty one. That's why, when she heard the prophecy that the legendary hero would come to challenge her, she felt hope for the first time. She trained hard, rebuilt her magical foundation, and improved her combat techniques, becoming the first to surpass the supreme demonic rank. That new level was named the Demon King rank. But when she waited for the hero, he never came. All her effort was a cruel joke. So she forced fate. She took the sacred sword and used its power to search, until she found him. Back in the present, she finishes her story by revealing that this is how she met him. She asks him, slightly annoyed, if he knows how many years she waited in vain. Leping simply offers a small smile and an apology. Then he adds that thanks to that, they didn't have to fight and ended up becoming friends. Elizabeth admits he's right. She reflects that she knows it was all part of his plan, that he never wanted to hurt her and let time dull her desire to kill him. Then, Leping holds her by the shoulders, leans in, and says he wishes he had met her sooner. Surprised, she asks why he's acting like this all of a sudden. He says her childhood was too hard, and he wishes he could have been there to bake her the best cakes, sew her the prettiest dolls, and give her a happy childhood. The queen calls him silly, but asks if things aren't fine now. Leping calls her by name and, holding her arms, confesses that from now on, she won't have to be strong alone. He'll be by her side for everything. He'll make every day the best of her life, and protect her smile until the end of time. Those words make both their hearts race, creating a warm and romantic atmosphere. Little by little, they begin to lean in. But just before the kiss happens, Wankai appears barking. The little dog reflects that he managed to catch the frisbee. He had to invoke 3 codes and optimize over 70 million lines, but he finally passed the test. He thinks, excitedly, that his master will praise him. However, his system detects danger alerts. Elizabeth was furious. In the next second, she channels power into her foot and kicks the poor Wonkai, sending him flying very, very far away. Leping watches how far Wonkai has flown, commenting that he's very far away, while thinking that luckily, he already updated his cloud data connection system. Then, the queen calls the hero's attention, surprising him even more as she approaches and asks if they can continue where they left off. This leaves Leping confused, but with no escape route, as Elizabeth takes his face in both hands. They are about to continue what they had almost done before. Meanwhile, Wonkai rolls across the ground until stopping at some distance. He grumbles to himself, saying that his update was useless since he can't erase the fear he feels toward that fierce woman. However, what he doesn't know is that not far from there, a mysterious being asks Alpha if that's the first warrior under Leping and Elizabeth's command. The Sacred Sword replies yes, and adds that the warrior's name is Wonkai. The mysterious figure comments that he looks like a dumb dog and doesn't seem like a threat. At that moment, a warning screen appears in front of him. It tells the player not to lower their guard or underestimate the enemy, as they must complete the final mission. The mission is to eliminate Leping and Elizabeth. Upon completion, the player will receive full system control as a reward. The mysterious being nods, says he understands, and orders Alpha to keep watching them. If anything happens, he must report it immediately, mentally. The Sacred Sword confirms he will do so, and refers to the mysterious figure as Gut-sama. After that, the man disappears, leaving Alpha alone to continue his mission. Meanwhile, Wonkai wonders if his comrade is nearby and if he might have found a strange person. He reflects that he doesn't really care and that it's not a big deal. He affirms that he must repair himself first, since he needs to train to overcome his fear of that woman. Elsewhere, in the Sea of Darkness, eerie beings stand atop black pillars, watching everything through a portal. The Whisperer comments that the gate is already open, but the impurity of 5,000 dark gears isn't enough for them all to descend at once. The Thousand-Eyed Demon replies that it doesn't matter, as he has calculated through chaotic measurements. If the first of them descends, the rest can receive abilities one by one, thus completing the descending fusion. The Devouring Worm asks if that process will take too long, since if the powerful ones of that world discover them, they might interrupt it. The Defiler claims that if they manage to descend in a single body, no one in that world will be able to face them. He assures that he will slaughter them all and turn their flesh into the filthiest impurity. The Skull Weaver calls him an idiot and asks if he already forgot the legendary hero they once faced. He also reminds him that Malfoy is waiting for the perfect moment to take advantage of the situation. The Watcher comments that in all the futures he's seen, there's no possibility of failure. The full power of chaos is an attack from a higher dimension. The Defiler, licking his lips, says just thinking about it makes him hungry. He confesses he wants to turn that world into a land of twisted desires and slowly savor the despair of every being. The Skull Weaver exclaims that they will finally be able to replenish corpses, since after destroying that dimension, they'll connect with the others. The Watcher concludes that Malfoy believes he can manipulate them, but in reality, he doesn't understand what they are. The Whisperer lets out a sinister laugh and warns that Elizabeth must prepare herself, as he promised she would regret it. Back with Leping, he starts preparing the things he'll take. He checks if he already has the comb, the nail clipper, the bath sponge, the handmade soap, and of course, the moisturizer, since skin gets very dry after a hot spring. He thinks he almost has everything ready for Elizabeth, while his own luggage is simpler, just a few changes of clothes, and he can't forget his swimsuit. He writes down a reminder not to forget to pick fresh ingredients from his garden before leaving, and wonders what else he should bring. Then he remembers something essential for the trip and starts searching in his drawer, pulling out a balloon, in case there's a party. At that moment, the Queen asks what he's doing and if he needs help. He quickly replies no, that he's almost ready. Then he asks if he can help her with anything. Elizabeth enters the room and says he can help her choose which swimsuit to take, as she can't decide. Leping, blushing at what he sees, wonders how she found out, but quickly changes the subject, focusing on the bikini. Meanwhile, he remembers what happened yesterday. When helping Elizabeth design her swimsuit, he got carried away by his imagination and ended up making many, quite strange sets. The Queen, surprised, asks what's wrong and if the swimsuit doesn't look good. Then she snaps her fingers, changing to another suit, and asks what he thinks of that one, if it's better now. The hero gets even more nervous and repeatedly asks her to wait. He thinks that while packing, he accidentally packed many more outfits than needed. The Queen, confused by his indecision and lack of clear answers, asks what he's saying and if that suit doesn't look good either. She reflects that as her bond with Leping deepens, she's also starting to feel what he likes. She says she followed her intuition to its strongest point, finding those outfits. But seeing his reaction, she wonders if none are right. She questions if her intuition failed. She snaps her fingers once more, promising not to give up. She summons another suit on her body and asks what he thinks of this one, convinced that her intuition is stronger than it seems. Then Amelia appears and asks why humans wear such tight clothes in hot springs, stating they're not comfortable at all. Even so, she adds that she used to bathe with her queen without anything on, and that won't be a problem when they get to the hot springs. Elizabeth, upon hearing that, snaps her fingers again and agrees, saying that in a hot spring, wearing anything isn't necessary. She realizes she almost fell into a trap. She thinks those suits reflect Lepping's tastes, but in the end, they're just objects. She concludes that if she becomes obsessed with them, she'll lose focus. What he truly loves must be her, not her clothing. So she takes off everything she had on and declares that none of those outfits can be worn in public. Lepping, alarmed, covers her with a towel, thinking that at the hot springs there will be other people, and he can't let others see her like that. On another day, the heroes group is ready. Lepping comments that they can finally depart. He adds that he's excited and wonders what amazing place the Dwarf King and Uncle Boss found. The queen confesses she's also eager to see what they prepared. Then she looks at the hero and wonders what surprise he has in store for her. Emilia says she's excited too, especially about bathing with her mistress. Then the queen activates her teleportation power. In an instant, the three appear at the planned location, the hot springs. Lepping, upon seeing what's in front of him, can't believe it. He screams with excitement. The place is huge and luxurious. Elizabeth, on the other hand, says it doesn't seem like a big deal. Suddenly, Pixius appears, greeting both Lepping and the queen. Lepping greets her too and asks if she came to enjoy the springs. The girl nods and says that after her country returned to normal, she was lucky to receive an invitation from the Sword Saints Guild to help build the hot springs. That makes Lepping happy, and he thanks her for her effort. She replies it was nothing, and that the kindness of both of them is something the kingdom of Aristotle will never be able to fully repay. She also admits she hoped to see Elizabeth again, and that makes her happy. Emilia, jealous, asks her not to look at her mistress with those weird eyes. Elizabeth, however, tells them to stop fighting and asks them to guide her. Pixius agrees and kindly asks them to follow her, saying she'll now be their guide. They begin walking toward the large structure, but on the way, someone greets them. Lepping, recognizing her, asks what she's doing there. It's Gigi. The woman replies that she's patrolling the area since they're in charge of the hot springs security. The hero thanks her for her effort. Then, the red-haired girl in the group asks if today was the day the hero and the demon queen were arriving, and why there are civilians here. A blonde replies that she thinks it's just a princess and her servant from some small southern kingdom. But Gigi bows, thanking the hero for the greeting. Leaping comments that it looks like she's doing well in the Sword Saints Guild, which she confirms, saying it's all thanks to his guidance. They begin chatting, while Gigi's group members watch in disbelief at how close they seem. The white-haired man asks if that's really the legendary hero, surprised at how well he hides his aura. The redhead wonders if he's serious, incredulous that he taught her aunt the Tai Chi sword technique. She confesses he doesn't look like a hero. The blonde comments that maybe the woman beside him is the legendary demon queen. At that moment, the hero greets them with a smile, saying he remembers them from the last guild tournament. But the three misinterpret his words, thinking he said he'll never forget their faces or actions. Luna and Anna collapse in fright, fainting from the pressure. Immediately, someone calls the white-haired guy. The young man freezes, unsure if they're really talking to him. The hero places his hand on Qing's shoulder and asks Gigi if she's learned well from him, stating that her swordless style is impressive. The young man questions the idea that she learned from him, but Gigi replies by asking if he really wants her to learn Qing's sword technique, while reflecting that in fact, all of Qing's techniques were originally taught by her. Then, Lepping reveals that he simply copied her movements and learned on his own. However, he adds that since he has no magic, he cannot generate an energy sword like the warrior does, making it clear that they have both taught each other. The hero comments that it's just like the saying goes, among three people, there's always something to learn. And he confesses that he has learned a lot from them. Kang, slightly embarrassed, replies that it's not like that he has neither merit nor the ability to teach. He also asks Gigi not to misunderstand and wonders how he could possibly teach anything. However, the woman tells him not to worry. She adds that the hero already clearly said that his level is insufficient, and that she hasn't fully understood it yet. She reflects that when she first understood it, she realized she shouldn't be obsessed with techniques, but rather merge with nature to feel it. But in reality, that's not all. Thinking only about merging with nature is also a form of obsession. She believes that humans and nature should be one and the same, with no distinction. However, she still hasn't let go of the burden of having been the strongest among humans. Fortunately, the hero opened her eyes. She believes that if someone as strong as him can still learn from Qing, then she cannot allow herself to be arrogant. Even from someone weaker than her, there are valuable things to learn. This is the true reason why the hero asked her to return to the Swordmasters Association and start from scratch. That's when Gigi begins to levitate and shine, surprising Qing, but not the hero, who comments that she's floating again. Thus, Gigi Saugus reaches the level of 5-star Demon King. The white-haired warrior, upon seeing this, reflects that a single sentence from the hero was enough for Lady Gigi to level up. He confesses that, at his level, it's hard to truly understand what just happened. He believes that the legendary hero has been traveling incognito among mortals, causing every major figure in each kingdom to increase their power. He considers that these events are completely unlike anything he knows, and wonders why, being so powerful, the hero said he wanted to learn from him. Then Ching kneels and apologizes. Seeing this, Lipping wonders if he has heat stroke, recalling that the same thing happened with the two girls who accompanied him. He asks if he's all right, and why he doesn't take a break. But the warrior replies that thanks to him, he's begun to understand, and that now he's leveling up. Just then, the queen tells Lipping to hurry, thinking that he gave his blessing as soon as he arrived. She wonders if he realized that the warrior's strength is still not enough to withstand the chaotic energy of the Dark Sea. She believes that one reason they placed the hot springs there was just in case, so they could cover for each other. Gigi asks the hero to leave the external matters to her, to which Lipping agrees and thanks her for her hard work, reflecting that it's best not to interrupt her training for now. He then runs to his group and tells them he's arrived. The group begins to enter the hot springs, receiving a welcome from several familiar faces. The hero greets Uncle Boss, Elif, and the Dwarf King. He thanks them for building the hot springs and the hotel, but is left speechless upon seeing the interior. He shouts that it's way too over the top, revealing that the place is huge and filled with many exotic structures. Lipping tells Elizabeth to take a look, pointing out that the place is much larger than it appears from the outside. The queen asks what the problem is, explaining that it's just low-level spatial magic. The hero realizes it's magic and wonders if that upward-flowing water column was also created with magic. He admits that everything is way too exaggerated and that, if it were up to him, he could never do something like this. He reflects that it's a supreme fusion of magic and blacksmithing. Trembling, Heimerdinger thinks that even though he tried to cover the flaws with an elegant appearance, the hero noticed them instantly. He says the hero gave him a divine weapon, but in return he couldn't give him anything of equal value. Both Elif and Uncle Boss look down, believing the hero didn't like it. The three kneel down, and the hero, confused, asks what's wrong with them. He thinks they might have rushed the construction and ended up exhausted. Lipping comments that he didn't actually ask for such an extravagant hot spring, to which his subordinates reply that they already knew. Then the hero approaches them and says that, since they made it this way, all that's left is to give them something in return. Everyone believes they're about to receive divine punishment, but the truth is that Lipping gives them a basket of fruit and some words of encouragement. He explains that they're fresh fruits he just picked and hopes they'll be useful. Uncle Boss takes them, speechless, and simply asks why. The hero replies that he only picked a few fruits, so they'll have to share them with the others, and thanks them for their hard work. He also reflects that they'll be staying at the hot springs for a few days, so they should save enough fruit to cook something special for Elizabeth. If she gets upset, the trip will be a failure. Just then, Heimerdinger raises his hand and asks for permission to consult again about the art of forging. Lipping replies that there's no need for such formality, that he can ask freely. The great blacksmith reveals that no matter how hard he tries or how meticulous he is, he still can't forge weapons of the hero's quality, and asks what he's missing. Lipping thinks, here we go again. He knows the dwarf lord is Elizabeth's vassal, and that every time he sees the demon queen's fiancé, he asks forging questions as a sign of respect. But since they asked, he must answer seriously. He can't look bad in front of Elizabeth. So the hero responds that, in his opinion, working with dedication doesn't mean obsessing over details, but feeling it from the heart. In short, it's not about seeing with your eyes, but feeling with your heart. And that's enough. However, internally, the hero thinks his skills are limited. What he really wants to say is that practice makes perfect, but guided by intuition. Upon hearing that, a single sentence awakens Heimerdinger, who asks if he shouldn't trust what his eyes see. He admits that, in the end, that was what he was missing. Hearing the hero, he feels that his 700-year career as a blacksmith was nothing but stagnation and wasted time. The perfect proportion formula, the most precise polishing angle, and the exact tempering time. He believes that even if he magnified the details 10,000 times, that still wouldn't be working from the heart. It was all just an excuse to justify his stubbornness. He concludes that true forging must not be limited by external factors. Then, with a single motion, he removes his glasses, or rather, his eyes. Lipping, upon seeing that, asks what he's doing. Heimerdinger throws his eyes to the ground and thanks the hero for his guidance, confessing that he now understands everything, and begins to level up. Uncle Boss congratulates him for reaching the Demon King rank, but then asks about his eyes and requests Elif's help. His daughter replies that yes, she can use herbs to heal him, and will prepare it immediately. But Heimerdinger replies that it's not necessary, because right now, he sees more clearly than ever. He reflects that now he can clearly feel with his heart every flaw in the forging field, and he believes he has finally understood everything. Lipping, doubtful, asks if the Dwarf King's glasses were a limiter to his powers, and thinks that his way of thinking is definitely not something a mere mortal like him can easily understand. Heimerdinger confirms that they were, that the artifact helped him in forging, and that he was very proud of it. But in the end, it only ended up being a brake on his growth. He gives thanks, although he still has one more question. But just at that moment, the Queen interrupts and asks if they're done, stating that they're exaggerating everything. She adds that they must be careful, because if they become too ambitious, they might not be able to handle the consequences. Heimerdinger immediately kneels down, apologizing to the Demon Queen and acknowledging she's right. For his part, Lepping thinks he doesn't fully understand the situation, but he's sure Elizabeth is right, since everyone has treated her well so far, and he assumes he's gaining some prestige by association. Finally, Pixius tells them they should proceed to the suite they'll be sharing. He adds that it's a bit far, so now they'll take a transport vehicle. He approaches some leaves, confirms they're roughly the same size, and tosses a capsule onto them. Then, the leaf transforms into a means of transportation. Pixius explains that the space capsule is a new invention she created by combining the properties of science and plant magic. The capsule stores the body, while the magical plant provides the necessary energy. Everyone boards, and the transport slowly takes them to the room. Leaping looks around and comments that it's very stable, and much quieter than the previous mechanical fish. Pixius remembers Wonkai, acknowledging that his creation was an enthusiastic source of inspiration for her. She also reflects that it was Elizabeth who introduced her to magic, and that the hero's mechanical dog, even after seeing it several times, remains an endless source of creative inspiration. If she's not mistaken, it represents the pinnacle of technology. The little dragon asks her master why she uses that kind of vehicle if she herself is her official mount. Pixius, with the intention of teasing her, says that after all, it's just a means of transport and, of course, can be replaced at any time. Amelia, annoyed by the comment, curses the girl and asks if she dares to take her place, while they both stare at each other tensely. The Queen asks them not to waste time and to go to the room at once. Internally, she reflects that once they arrive, no one will be able to interrupt her moment alone with Lepping. Pixius speeds up the flight, and Lepping is impressed to see various attractions along the way. The guide tells them that those are floating islands with different themed hot springs. She informs them that if they want to visit any, they just have to call her. She also indicates that they are already approaching the room assigned to them. Lepping thanks Pixius with a smile, excited by the idea of enjoying the place. Upon arrival, everyone disembarks, and the guide tells them that if they need anything later, they just have to ring the bell in the room and she will come immediately. The hero replies that it's fine, and suggests that she also get some rest, while she begins to leave the place. Lepping looks at the Queen and tells her that they've arrived. Elizabeth, slightly blushing, asks what surprise he wants to give her. He replies that she'll know soon, but first they have to go inside. At the same time, he thinks he should tell her at the most romantic moment. He takes her hand, and they enter the dimensional room together. Once inside, the hero is amazed by the interior. The Queen sees the bed and reflects that she has already guessed the surprise, that tonight will be the key moment to take a big step in their relationship. She begins to imagine the intimate scene between them, until Amelia interrupts the fantasy by jumping onto the bed, saying it's very comfy and pleasant, and that tonight she will sleep there with her master. With a smile, she says that she's very happy. But that happiness doesn't last long. Suddenly, a blue light envelops her and she disappears, being absorbed by a somewhat familiar object. Lepping is surprised and asks if that isn't the small model he had built some time ago and left on the table. The Queen, putting the Pokeball into her backpack, replies that it's nothing important. She just thought it would be convenient to bring it, as it can store Amelia's contract inside, which is very useful. Then she approaches him, hugs him, and asks him not to talk about anything else because now they are completely alone. They kiss passionately and begin to grow more intimate. Until someone arrives. It's Annie, who interrupts the loving couple. Upon seeing them, she greets them politely. Lepping, slightly blushing, returns the greeting and asks why she's in their room. The girl replies that since she knows nothing about architecture or construction, she volunteered to clean. She was just cleaning the bathroom. The hero understands, but tells her it wasn't necessary, and that from now on, he'll handle the cleaning himself. Annie, confused, asks if she did something wrong. She reflects that the bed is already unmade, even though they haven't slept yet, and wonders if they weren't satisfied with her work. Then she apologizes and explains that she tried to imitate Lepping's sewing techniques for the bed, the sheets, and the pillows, but she knows there's a big difference. Still, if they're not satisfied, she can redo them and asks for a chance to fix it. Lepping tells her it's not necessary, that she did very well, but she just arrived at an inconvenient moment. At that moment, the queen yells for her to stop, scaring both Lepping and Annie. She slowly approaches the girl and asks how many times they're going to repeat that scene, and if they're not bored of it. Annie, nervous about the approach, insists that she doesn't understand if she did something wrong. The queen places her hand on Annie's head and asks if she wants a blessing. She explains that for something so simple, she doesn't need Lepping to teach her anything, because she, as the demon queen, will take care of it. She then activates her power, the Demon King's blessing, which causes a complete transformation in Annie. Lepping watches in astonishment and asks if she'll be okay, seeing that the power granted completely transforms her physique. Elizabeth has fully activated Jimji's lineage within Annie. The hero, surprised, asks her if she feels okay, while reflecting that Elizabeth helped Annie evolve. He finds it incredible. The queen explains that she has awakened all the power of her lineage and orders her to leave and learn to control it by herself. Annie is left confused, not understanding what's happening. But Elizabeth has no patience. Using her power, she makes Annie's broom fly through the air, throwing her away, telling her to stop saying nonsense and to leave, expelling her far from the room. Once Annie is gone, Elizabeth comments with satisfaction that she finally has some peace. Then she turns and with an intense gaze, tells Lepping that now it's his turn. The young man, confused, asks her to wait a bit and not be so impulsive, while slowly stepping back. Until he bumps into the bed. Elizabeth, seeing that he can't escape anymore, asks if he knows how long she's waited for this moment. She gently pushes him onto the bed, moves even closer, and says that now no one can interrupt them. Already on top of him, she demands that he stop stalling and asks where the surprise he prepared for her is. Lepping, nervous about the situation and her closeness, wonders if she has discovered his plan to propose. But his thoughts are interrupted when the queen firmly demands that he give her the surprise right now. Getting even closer.